There we go. Now we're live.
Hi, welcome.
Hello.
We just did a whole intro without you.
Oh,
this is, you know what? It's the UAP people getting back at me. That's what this is.
You've been hacked, bro.
Yeah, probably. So we hit the button. The button didn't do anything, but now we're here thanks to our loyal viewers. We just did a whole intro. We were with Lieutenant Colonel Sean Cross, who was just getting warmed up to tell us his story.
That was a great show. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
This is the least professional show he's ever been on.
Yeah.
Confirmed by not hitting the button properly, apparently. But you are the Chief of Safety of the 403rd Wing and Hurricane Hunter, and you've been on the Weather Channel for, what did you just say? Was it 11 episodes or 17 episodes?
It was 15 episodes, and it was filmed during the 2011 and 12 seasons. We did 6 episodes as a trial, and then they liked us a lot. Then we did 9 more episodes. And then, I get this question all the time. People ask me, like, hey, what happened to the show? That was like one of the best shows ever on TV on the Weather Channel. It was actually, at the time, the highest rated show ever. That's what they would put on the screen. Yeah, it was awesome. So it was really a lot of fun to be a part of. So everybody asked me, like, well, why don't they do the show anymore? I said, well, if you remember back around 2012, these really funny talking guys with long beards that made duck calls came around. And at that point right there, nobody wanted to see clean cut guys in flight suits. So we were done. It was over with.
I can assure you this is the bottom part of your TV career.
Yeah, you continue to you're in the continual descent, man.
We are not going to lift you back up into stardom. You might have a couple of people like email you like, hey, you were on that show. Why? But beyond that, I don't know. But thanks for joining us, Doug.
Yeah.
Are you still well after the first intro?
Me? So far, so good.
Perfect, Doug. Thanks.
Please don't quit, Doug.
Please don't quit.
We need you.
Nah, I figured we were done for the week.
We get all that we pay for.
I'm
But
gonna move
anyway,
my camera over a little bit.
yeah, why not?
Yeah, I'm going to move it over a little bit because it's easier for me to look at y'all like this. Okay.
Oh, well, if you do that, you miss all the details in the background.
Oh, well, that's true. You know what? This angle was better.
There you go. Perfect.
Anyway, now that we have an audience, why don't you tell us how you got into aviation? Did your family fly? Did you grow up around flyers, or did you make your own way and figure it out in your merry way?
So before we went live, like I was saying, nobody in my family was a pilot ever. I mean, I don't even know if they'd ever even been on an airplane. I mean, my first airplane ride was on Braniff Airlines, flying from New Orleans. If you hadn't figured that out yet, guys, that's where I'm from New Orleans to Orlando to go see Mickey Mouse, right? So and that was it. Actually, the New Orleans Saints were on a plane going to training camp. I'll never forget this. And I sat next to number 44, David Waymer, was going to summer camp, and I've got his autographed napkin. He gives me all this stuff. And like, I played Pee Wee football, and 44 was always my number. So I don't know. I guess that flight really did something for me. But nobody ever wanted to get into it. I was always fascinated with it as a young kid. And my dad will even tell you, he's like, yeah, he would always be pointing at the airplanes up in the sky. So as I got older, junior high, high school, I always knew that I wanted to have a military career because my dad did 2 years in the Army, and all of his brothers served for a couple of years. And for some reason, I wanted to be an Army helicopter pilot. I don't know why, but I was really intrigued by that. So as I go through, well, it's a good story. Hang in
in the Apache, right eye dominant, panties on your head. It just sounds like the perfect career.
Yeah. And you talk really funny like that with your chest beating, right? So anyway, I finally get to the point to where I'm like, okay, I'm ready to pull the trigger here and start talking to a recruiter. So I find this Army recruiter, and I give him my ASVAB scores, and I go to him, and he just tells me straight up, Sean, I'm just going to tell you, I'm not going to waste your time. You are not smart enough to be a helicopter pilot in the Army. True story.
No.
True story. I said,
wow.
I said, yeah, but you don't understand, man. I said, like, I'm good at doing things, like fixing stuff. I can do anything. I mean, I'm a jack of all trades. So he goes, well, I'm sorry. He goes, the scores, that's what it takes. I'm like, all right. So I left the Army and I became an Air Force pilot. But anyway, there's a long road between that. But this guy, he shot me down quick. I was like, man, all right. So forget the Army. So as I'm going through high school, it's close to my senior year, and I know I'm going to join the Air Force or the Navy is probably what I've got it narrowed down to at this point. So I know, so the Navy comes into town during Mardi Gras, right? And they always bring ships in to the waterfront. So we met a Navy sailor or whatever. I think he was an air crew member on the helicopter. So he wasn't there, but he hooked us up and he got us a tour on the aircraft carrier. So this guy tells me, he goes, all right, Sean. I said, look, let me tell you, buddy. I said, I'm either joining the Air Force or the Navy. I got it narrowed down. He goes, what do you want to see on a boat? I want to see where you eat and where you sleep. All right. So you know where I'm going with this. So we go to the dining hall first, or whatever y'all call it on the ship. I don't know, the mess hall or something. Chow hall. And I'm like, okay, this is cool, a lot of stainless steel everywhere. I said, well, where do you live at? So he takes me down into the berthing area, and we go down these, it looks like coffins, rows of coffins on this carrier. And the bottom guy is like literally 4 inches above the floor. The top guy, I think it was 3 bunks high, is the top. And I look above the top bunk, and it says these pipes running over this guy's head where he lives. And it says JP8 jet fuel. And I said, hey, man, I've seen enough. I'm done. That's it. There's no way I'm sleeping.
Sissy.
Yeah, well.
He's a safety-minded individual, Gonky. It has helped him through his entire career.
Yeah, I was done right there.
Don't bully our guest, please, Gonky.
So I finished up high school, and I was actually working in this repair shop in New Orleans. If y'all know it, well, y'all haven't been to my office yet. You need to come up to my office. It's like an auto museum, right? I got all this cars and stuff in there and everything. And I was my first car was a Volkswagen, and that's all I ever worked on. I worked in this Volkswagen repair shop, and their son was in the Air National Guard over in Belle Chase, Louisiana, in the 159th Fighter Group, F-15 unit, just a really premier unit. They do a phenomenal job over there. So he was kind of, moving me along, and I said, I don't know about this guard thing. I said, but I think I'm going to go active duty Air Force for whatever reason. And I said, I think I'm just going to take that route now. So I get all the way through the gauntlet, talking to this recruiter, got this greenhorn recruiter, but I think he knows what he's doing. And he says, all right, Sean, he goes, he literally met me off stage when I graduated and got my high school diploma. He was standing there waiting for it. And I'm like, no, I said, I want to at least take it home and look at it for a night before I give it to you. Whatever. That was my justification for not handing it over. So, like the next week, he sets me up to go to the MEPS in New Orleans, and he says, I said, look, I take things slow. I said, I just want to go down there and get the physical, make sure I qualify for the Air Force and all that stuff. Yeah, okay, no problem. So I go to the MEPS station on a Monday morning. Cab picks me up at the recruiting station on Veterans Highway, takes me down there, and it's like 7 a.m. And I go into this room, and I'm sitting there, and this guy from the Army comes in. And I'm in there with all these guys. Marines, Army, Navy, Coast Guard, you name it, right? We're all in there together. I'm the only Air Force guy. And this guy starts briefing us, and he's like, okay, we're going to do this, we'll do this, we'll eat lunch, then we'll come back in and we'll swear in. I'm like, whoa.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
We gotcha.
Yeah, this guy, he gets through his spiel. And then I raised my hand. I said, excuse me, sir. I said, he goes, yeah, what do you want? He didn't talk to me very nice. I said, look, I'm just here for a physical. I said, this whole thing about swearing in, So he goes, who told you you're just coming here to get a physical? I said, well, my recruiter. He looked right at me and said, oh, you believed him? And I was in for a long day, but so I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, I got to get out. This is not going to work. I'm not going to play this game, right? So I go through all of this gauntlet of, they test, and then they're like, man, Cross has got some real good scores here. I said, let's make him a linguist. I'm like, bro, I can barely speak English. I said, how am I going to be a linguist, right? So South Louisiana. So we go in there, I take this linguist test, and I almost passed it. Well, they made me take it again, right? You're supposed to wait 30 days. Oh, yeah, you'd be good at this. You pass this test. I take the test again, still failed it by like a couple of questions, had no idea what I was doing. And they take me in there, and they're like, all right, well, let's go ahead and pick out a job. I'm like, whoa, hold on a second here. I said, before we even do that, I said, if I'm going to do this, the guy told me I can have whatever I want because I've got top scores on the ASVAB. Well, it just depends. You got to fill out this sheet, and you may not be guaranteed a job exactly what you want and everything. I'm like, well, I said, he told me I could have what I want. I said, all right, let's open up the book. She says, the lady recruiter says, no, we can't do that. I said, well, why not? The book's right in front of you. She goes, no, what you have to do is fill out this dream sheet. And then we're going to submit your dreams in the computer, and it's going to tell us what you can have. I said, I don't think so. I said, ma'am, I've been selling used Volkswagens for 4 years from the age of 15. Something's not sounding right here. Okay.
The salesman meets the salesman.
Yeah. So
battle of wills.
So I was pushing back pretty hard. So they said, let me go get the senior. I'm like, all right, go get him. I don't even know what they're talking about. So they go get this guy, older guy. He comes in there. He had a lot of stripes on. Looking back, he was a senior master sergeant for E8 for anybody who doesn't know what that is in the Air Force. And
Gonky.
He says he comes in. Yeah, sorry. Anytime I do that, it's for Gonky. So I'm just putting it up. So this guy comes in. He tells me, he goes, well, look, let me just explain to you how this works. And I'm like, all right, I'm listening to this line of BS. And he goes, well, look, bottom line is the Air Force isn't going to close down because Cross doesn't join. I'm like, you're exactly right. I want my cab home right now. That was my out right there. I said, I went home. I was devastated. I walked in the house, talked to my dad. It seems like it was just yesterday. It was 36 years ago, almost 36 years ago. And I said, wow. I said, Dad, yeah, it was 1989. And I said, I'm crushed. I said, this is what I've always wanted to do, is join the Air Force. And I said, I just got a gut punch. So, you know what? I literally got in my Volkswagen Bug, drove up to the shop, and I was talking to the guys, and they're like, they gave me an earful. They're like, I don't know why you did that in the first place. Anyway, so I talked to his son some more, talked to another friend of mine who was a lieutenant colonel in a guard, old family friend of ours. And I had forgotten he was even in. And I called him, and he said, call this recruiter. I literally called the recruiter. His name was Chuck Senneldecker. And he said, when you call him, tell him you're a personal friend of mine, just like I do for you guys. You know what I'm saying? You call the safety center, you tell them you're a personal friend of Sean Cross's. They'll only put you on hold for 5 minutes instead of 10.
To any of our viewers, please call the safety center and name drop.
So anyway, he says, look, can you be down here tomorrow at 7 o'clock? I said, sure. It was way over in Belchase. So he said, show up. He goes, I need you to bring your diploma, birth certificate, passport, all this stuff, right? Sure. I go down there and I just literally set this stuff on this guy's desk. And it was just like the heavens opened up and everybody grabbed me by the hand and guided me into this vector of where I needed to be and start out in the Air National Guard. It was like it was meant to be. It really was. It was incredible how it worked out. And I ended up working. I wanted to be around the airplanes because I was a mechanic in high school. So I'm like, that'll be really cool to work on the planes. And he goes, what do you want to do? I said, well, I've always wanted to be a pilot. And he goes, well, the Guard, we send people straight to pilot training. I'm like, okay, I'm listening. He said, yeah. He goes, you got to get your degree. He goes, in the best place, you got to get around the pilots and get to know them and everything. And that's how you work your way up and get accepted to pilot training. I'm like, and he goes, then you're a part-time pilot in the Air Force, and then you could go do whatever else you want to do. I'm like, wow, that sounds pretty interesting. Ended up meeting some other people. I ended up getting a job in comm. I worked in a computer operations facility. This was back when we had mag tapes and punch cards and paper tape. I mean, this is way back, man.
Like Gonky's current computer.
Yeah.
Gonky's
I got
current deck.
I got some 5 1/4 floppies if you need them. So I go in there and meet these guys. I hit it off with them right off the bat, and they, that was back when you had to interview in whatever section you were going to work in the Guard. They probably still do it if they're smart. And I interviewed with these guys. We hit it off, and September, 3 months later, I went off to basic training, graduated on Halloween, and I ended up for tech school going to Keesler Air Force Base.
Oh.
So I got there on Halloween night, 1989, and we go into the dormitories, and what y'all see now in Keesler is all brand new. I was in the old block barracks. I mean, the floors were concrete and asbestos tile, and they had us wax and concrete and tile. It's just like the Navy, is today.
Sounds pretty nice.
Yeah, because they put all their money in ships, right? So we're doing all this stuff, and I can remember vividly laying in bed at like 2 o'clock in the morning in Biloxi at Keesler Air Force Base. It was in the fall, and I hear these C-130s right outside my window because they're right there by the flight line. And I'm like, what are these guys doing at 2 o'clock in the morning? This is insane. So little did I know, I'd find out many years later that I'd be one of those guys waking those kids up at 2 o'clock in the morning for early morning departure. But I get back to, I graduate from tech school there, went back to New Orleans, first semester at Delgado in New Orleans. Y'all know what that is.
I do. I'm familiar.
That's high educational foundation right there. And I think it's the Delgado Dolphins is what they call it. So I did two semesters at Delgado. I had no idea what I was doing. I walked in there. I mean, nobody in my family had been to college. Well, no, I take it back. My sister went to USL for a couple of semesters, but I walked in.
Boy, that's a blast from the past. USL.
USL, baby.
Yeah,
USL. The Raging Cajun.
That's it.
So I go in there and I told the lady, I said, ma'am, I have no idea. I just know I need a college degree because I'm going to be, I'm going to be a pilot in the Air Force.
Oh, yeah.
So she says, okay, well, you got to get some basics. She gives me these courses, whatever. I'm like, all right, just sign me up. I'll do whatever. I don't care. I had no idea. I didn't even know how to study, man. I was in high school. I was very, very social, if y'all haven't figured it out. And I was very involved in student government. If there was a microphone, I was always out in front, pep rallies, all that stuff. I was just really, really a busy bee, talking all the time, nonstop to everybody. I was like a politician. So I didn't take high school very serious. I actually wish I would have. And that's what I preached to my son. I'm like, son, you apply yourself academically so you don't end up like me. And, you'll probably do better than I turned out. But I got through all of that stuff, 2 semesters at Delgado. And then something happened in life, and I was just real quick. I was dating this girl. She dumped me. Greatest move ever. Thank you for doing that, honey. I appreciate it. And then I realized I got to get focused on this flying career even more. I hit the afterburner, went to Nicholls State, Thibodaux, Louisiana. And I said, they had a flying program. I get down there. I'm like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to get the flying program. And then I'm going to go to pilot training for the Air National Guard. I'm going to be an F-15 pilot on a weekend, and I'm going to fly airlines because that's what I want to do. That's my focus. I mean, I was laser focused when I got to Nicholls. Well, then I get to Nicholls and I check into the aviation program, find out it's a 2-year program, not a 4-year program. I'm like, well, that's all right. I can work with that because you got to have a 4-year degree, right, to be an officer.
Yep.
So I'm like, okay, that's the first roadblock, but we can work with it. So I'm like, let me just get a semester under my belt and then I'll figure out this flying thing. Well, I start digging into the flying thing. I'm like, man, that's just a lot of money. It's like Dewey Oxberger said in Stripes, $400. I don't have $400. So I'm like, all right, well, I don't have the money to fly. So I think what I'm going to do is just get the degree as fast as I can, and then I'll fly afterwards. Okay. And I'll save some money up through college. So I did. I embarked on this journey to get my degree as fast as possible. And I had 2 semesters at Delgado, only had 18 hours, dropped Western civilization twice, history of the world part 2, whatever you want to call it. It was terrible, horrible. My first test in Western Civ, the guy hands a test out. It's midterm. I'm looking at this test and I'm like, I don't know what any of this stuff is. I didn't get anything because this guy was talking straight. So after about 30 minutes, I signed my name on a paper and I turned it in blank. And I walked up to his desk and I put it on his desk and I'm like, oh, please just get out this classroom before this guy says anything. And I get to the door and I look back over my shoulder and he's looking at this test and there's like looking at the back. And then he turns and he looks at me and I just waved and walked out. And that's a true story. So I'm going to circle back to that. So I know I'm throwing a lot at y'all, but I got an hour and 39 minutes left. So just hang in there. So I'll give y'all a bathroom break in a little while. So I get up. After I dropped it twice, Nicholls State, I'm hard charging. I sign up for Western Civ again. I'm watching the planes fly by that I can't afford to fly. And then lo and behold, I get this horrible teacher for Western Civ. I end up having to drop this class again, right? I'm going to come back to this Western Civ. Don't let me forget about it. It's a little bit further down the road in my flying career. So I finally get to the Western Civ class for History of the World Part 1. All right. And I'm taking this class. I get through it. I got this awesome teacher, man. I just soar through this class, make all A's, right? I go History of the World Part 2. And the guy that I'm thinking I'm going to have, he ends up having a stroke. So he had to leave for the semester. So now I'm sweating, right? I'm getting through college, still not flying, but I'm hard charging, man. I'm almost there. I get down to my like second to last semester. I'm running out of free tuition with the Air Guard. I only got like enough for 3 semesters left. And lo and behold, Delgado comes up with these telecourses. All right. This is back like VHS tape time. I mean, this is way back, bro. So I'm like looking at this stuff. I don't even know how I found out about it. I just stumbled on it. So I'm like, I'm gonna try something sneaky here. There's always a workaround, right? And I call the guard people and I'm like, hey, I'm gonna try and dual enroll in 2 universities at one time. And they're like, oh, I don't think you can do that. So I'm like, no, I think I can pull it off, right? So I go down there to Delgado, and sure enough, I can't enroll twice with the tuition exemption. I'm like, that's cool. I'm like, well, how much is it? This 3-hour course? And they tell me it was like, I don't know, $175. So I pull out my checkbook. I'm like, all right, there goes 3 hours of flying, right? Here you go, write a check. I'm gonna get this TV course down. So like 3 weeks later, I got to show up. I was working in a dormitory as assistant house director, right? And I said, I got to have this weekend off because I got to go to Delgado in New Orleans, get my little Toyota pickup truck. I got to drive all the way down there. I got to be there for this intro to this course. So I go there, I sit in the auditorium and I'm waiting. And it's 9 o'clock and this dude walks in and I hear him, oh, good morning, everybody. And everybody's in there. So I'm like, okay. And I look over my shoulder and it's the guy from my first semester when I turned into blank paper. I'm like, oh God. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, I'm doomed. I'm like, I got to graduate into like 2 more semesters. I'm never going to get this class taken care of, right? So he comes in, he starts talking. He's like, all right, look, everybody go to the bookstore, buy this book. He goes, this class was just thrown on me. He goes, I've never done it before. No one's ever taught this at this school. He goes, I just picked this book up 30 minutes ago. He goes, and I'm just going to tell y'all guys. He goes, at the end of every chapter, there's 5 multiple choice questions. And these look like really good final questions. Does anybody have a question? I'm like, absolutely not. I'll see you on final day. I made 100 on the final because the answer key was in the back of the book. I'm like, this is great.
Awesome.
So anyway, fast forward, graduate from Nichols, get my degree. I had been pledging with the 159th all along. And so I graduated in 94. I'd been up in front of the UPT board, 92, 93, leading up to 94. At that time in the Guard, there was a lot of issues like with minority quotas and things like that. I mean, it's a fact. I just have to say it. That's what it was. So they said, look, Sean, and I had my letter from the 122nd Fighter Squadron. I was in line. I was probably maybe 3rd or 4th to go or something like that. There was a guy by the name of Tony Mefford. I don't know if he's still around. I'm sure he's long retired. And I got the letter written from the Fighter Squadron. He said, hey, man, we love you. We feel confident we'll have a place for you in the F-15 unit. I'm thinking, all right, cool. I'm just keep hard charge and get this knocked out. So I graduate, and then all of a sudden I'm like, I wasn't feeling it. I mean, my parents had retired, and they moved to Florida Panhandle. And so, a lot of things going through my mind. I'm like, I was living in the Florida Panhandle for a while, commuting back and forth to the Guard. I'd come in town, hang out with my buddies, and I was like, man, it's getting kind of old commuting to New Orleans. I'm like, I don't know if the flying thing is going to work out. I really thought it was dead. I really did. I'm like, there's just no way they're not sending anybody to pilot training. It's just not going to happen. So I went down Highway 85 South, and I saw this sign. I'd started this little business trying to make a few side dollars, and I kept seeing this sign, Duke Field. The business didn't work out. I'm not even going to go into it. Okay? Anyway, quite embarrassing. Anyway, so I go, I remember seeing this documentary years ago on flying, and I was laying in my bed, and this was back when water beds were the thing, right? I had a king-size water bed, right? I'm laying there, and I'm looking up at this TV in my room, and my little dog, Chihuahua, was running around. And there was this documentary on National Geographic, and it was something about the AC-130 gunship. And They were talking about the Air Force Reserve at Duke Field in Florida. So when I saw that sign, it clicked on me. I'm like, hey, that's a reserve unit. So I was in the Guard now. Guard and Reserve, 1 week in a month, but the Guard state run, Reserve is federal. And I'm like, well, I guess I could transfer. So let me at least go check them out. I had already transferred to the Education and Training Office, so I was doing that for a while as a training manager. And I literally just pulled into Duke Field. I had a shirt and tie on, and I had a resume in my folder. And I went and talked. Somebody stopped me in the hallway, and they said, can I help you? I said, yeah. I said, I'm in the Guard in New Orleans. I'm just curious about maybe joining a reserve unit here. I said, do you have anybody that I could talk to? And I said, I'm a training manager. I said, where's your base training office? Because that's really who I need to go talk to. Because you got to go right to the source, right? Don't go to recruiter. Don't do that. We know that already. Sean learned that 6 years earlier. So I go up there and I meet these two guys and I sit down and I'm a salesman, right? I just sell myself. Like, look, this is who I am. It's what I got to offer. I was trying to be a pilot, tired of commuting to New Orleans. The aviation thing's probably not going to work out. They were a little leery because I had my degree. They're like, yes, he's going to jump ship quick, Yeah, and I know these things now because I feel these kids out that come in all the time as we hire new hires. So you know what to ask. So they're like, look, we really don't have anything right now, but we're going to keep your number. About a month later, I get a call from this guy, Greg Hetrick. We still keep in touch. I see him on social media every now and then. He calls me. He goes, look, Sean, this is Greg out here, Duke. He said, look, I didn't have anything for you at the time but you're 7-level qualified training manager. He goes, you're fully trained. We got this new flying squadron standing up. Because I think you'd be a good mix for them. I think I want to get you in to talk with the squadron commander. So they were going from the AC-130 gunship, the A model, which if guys down there at the Air Armament Museum down off of 85, the first lady's sitting out there. So she was flying when I was at Duke. And
wow.
So anyway, yeah, it was pretty wild. In fact, I got a couple of shells that were shot out of her. So let me back up. So I said, all right, I'll come in. I'll meet. So this guy calls me, Jerry Allen. He goes, yeah, look, I saw your resume. I've talked to the guys in training. We got a new squadron standing up. We need somebody who can come in here and get this thing rolling. Like, all right. I said, that's fine. Hey, I appreciate the opportunity, whatever. I go in there. I meet with a guy. He's a lieutenant colonel. His name is Clay McCutcheon. He's a celebrity in the Florida Panhandle. He's a retired 2-star general now. Very good friend of mine to this day. And he lives up there in Holt. He's got his own airstrip, the McCutcheon Intergalactic Airfield. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, I see you shaking your head.
Wow.
He's a phenomenal guy. He's got all of these antique airplanes. He's just incredible. So he's a historian by trade. And so they called me in finally for an interview one night, and I went up there. I was probably it was a weeknight at like 6 o'clock, and I think I put my blues on to go in, short sleeve blues. And I go in this old block building right there by the flight line, right across from Spectre Hall, which was, Spectre Hall was in the movie 12 O'Clock High. Was Gregory Peck? Yeah, I mean, it's very historic. There's a lot of history that happened on Duke Field. It's incredible. I think Doolittle and the Raiders practice there or something back in the day. Anyway, so we go in, I interview with him, and there's 3 of us in there, and he goes, tell me about training. I tell him all about it. And the commander literally says to me, he goes, Sean, he goes, look, I see that you've got your degree. He goes, we send people to pilot training. And I'm thinking, right. I've heard this before, blowing smoke at me. I know how political it is. I didn't say this because I didn't want to botch the interview, but I'm just thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, just keep your mouth shut, get the job so you don't have to commute anymore, right? So I'm playing it smart. And so it was a great interview. We had a great time. We laughed and stuff, told him all about training, made up a few things to make myself sound really good, and he might be watching.
It all worked out.
He'll even tell you. He goes, this fast talking Cajun from New Orleans comes in, and after an hour and a half interview, I'm like, what happened? He was like, he didn't even know what happened. I hit him so hard, so fast. So anyway, I roll out, and about 2 weeks later, the guy Jerry Allen calls me. He goes, look, here's the deal. He said, the job's yours if you want it. He goes, we had 3 other people in front of you because they were going from the gunship, which had a crew of like 13 or something with all the gunners, sensor operators. So they were trying to take care of their bubbas, right? They had to give these guys all reserve jobs. No, and I even told them at the interview, I said, look, if you want to double slot me, I'll do all the work. Your guy can get the credit. I'm just tired of commuting. I said, I think it's over in New Orleans. It's not going to happen. And it was tough because that was my home. Those guys raised me over there. The Air National Guard in Louisiana was phenomenal to me. I got a degree for free. I mean, the Guard had tuition exemption. I had 100%. You couldn't find that anywhere. I had the GI Bill. Back at the time, the GI Bill was only $5,000. I worked in the dorm as assistant house director. So by the time I graduated, I was actually making money. I mean, I didn't know a penny when I graduated. It was zero when I walked out. It was awesome. So, I mean, that was really tough to leave that unit because they really kickstarted my career. So I fast forward to Duke Field. I go in. I get started on day 1. I hit the ground running. I'm rolling. I'm getting these guys spun up on the ground training things and all that. And Clay McCutcheon, he comes to me, goes, Sean, you got your UPT package filled out yet? And this is like 6 weeks into the squadron. I'm thinking, oh yeah, working on it. I'm thinking, this guy. I'm like, what is this guy talking about? I know it doesn't work like this. I don't come from money. I'm nobody's son. I mean, I am somebody's son. I'm Henry Cross's son. My dad is phenomenal. But you know what I'm saying? We didn't have any clout in the Air Force. We had no background. You know, my father was a longshoreman for 30 years on the waterfront in New Orleans. I mean, he paid his dues, and he wanted to make sure I got an education. So, I mean, I'm working at it, chipping away, man. And so I'm like, all right, he's playing with me. So a couple more drill weekends goes by, and one of the pilots, and I'm working with the pilots, and I'm just cutting up with them like I am with you guys. They were awesome. And they one of them grabbed me by the arm one day and said, Sean, are you not listening to Colonel McCutcheon? I said, what are you talking about? They said, he's going to send you to pilot training. He said, you've got to get your stuff together. I was like, are you serious? They're like, yeah. They said, look, this guy knows everybody. Trust me, he knows he's a 2-star general. I'm pretty sure he knew everybody at the time as an 05. So I said, all right. So I went and talked to him. I said, look, I'm working on this. He goes, Sean, you need to get your degree. I mean, get your private pilot's license and all that stuff as fast as you can, because I don't know how much longer I'm going to be here. Because y'all know, I mean, these guys, they jump ship quick. They're constantly moving. So I'm like, all right, I got to get my sponsorship quick. So found there was a guy he was a gunner, and he was his name is Ray Mansfield. He's an instructor pilot down at Fort Walton. Phenomenal guy. I said, Ray, I said, I got the money. I said, I want to get my private pilot's license. I said, and I want to do it quick. I said, I want to fly every day. I said, I need it. I'm going to take my private pilot's license, check ride at 40 hours, and then I'm submitting my UPT package. I'm going to pilot training. And he goes, all right, Sean, we got a little bit of problem. He goes, you got the money. That's great. He goes, I only fly on the weekends. I'm like, all right, showstopper number 2, right? So he goes, and weather, and I don't know all this stuff. He goes, well, weather comes into a factor, and you may not have a good flight. And I had a couple of those, right? That happened. So we fast forward. I start flying with Ray. He's a great guy, and I had a little trouble starting the airplane, right? Which is important. This is important. You got
that is important,
plane, right? So
right?
Oh God, it was terrible. When I was with Ray, I could start the plane, but when I go solo, I couldn't start it. I don't know if it was a nerve thing. You got to pull that plunger out. It's been a long time, so I may be off of this. So, so I go in once. Yeah, it's like a plunge. You pump the gas to it or something. I don't know. Anyway, you guys.
You're priming it.
Yeah, y'all are aviators. I'm just a pilot. Okay, I don't know. So yeah, I'm plunging the toilet, right? I'm doing whatever I had to do with this thing. So I can't get this freaking thing started. Well, they're having some fly-in that day, and I'm out there trying to get this plane started. It's getting pretty bad. Like, people are at the hangar. They're starting to look like, who is this kid in this airplane? So some guy comes over there, and he gets the plane started. And he says, I don't know what he did. It's pure magic. He said, Sean, he goes, look, dude, he goes, go have fun. I'm like, bro, I said, or sir, excuse me, I don't even know if I want to go right now. I mean, I'm really concerned about this. So he's, no, you'll be all right. So I do a couple laps. I go fly around our farm up there in Baker, Florida, where my parents live, right by the Crestview Vortex, about a mile from it, right around the corner from Sky Ranch Estates. Y'all know where that is? It's a private airstrip up there.
Yeah,
so
I know exactly where that is.
I could have bought all the lots I wanted on that strip for $10,000 a piece back in the day.
Oh, dude!
I could have bought every one of them for $10,000 each.
Should have bought them all.
Yeah, I was a greenhorn at real estate, and that'll be when I come back on the next episode. We'll talk about real estate. But
it's Gonky's channel.
Yeah, I'll come back for that. I can talk on that too. So I go fly. I finally get to the point where I'm going to do my check ride. Guy comes out and gives me my check ride, and I'm sweating. And Ray Mansfield standing over there by the hangar because he knows what I have trouble with. I mean, because it's important, right? On your check ride, you got to be able to start the plane, right? I could not get the plane started on my check ride. So I can be very convincing. I told this guy, I was like, man, something's going on with this plane. I said, I don't know what the problem is. This thing runs great. I said, I've been using it for 40 hours, right? I mean, I was like 40.1, right? So he goes, let me try. He's a big guy, man. We're in a Cessna 150. I mean, he's like,
150.
Yeah, dude, this thing was so small, it was crazy. I mean, I can hang both arms out the windows. He's like 275 pounds, and I'm like 135. So I'm like, in the sun. So this guy, he gets the plane started. He finally got it started. I had it so screwed up, he couldn't hardly get it started. So he starts it. We go out, and he had asked me in a pre-brief. He goes, because I did my you got to do like a little cross country or whatever. And so I picked my first point was Gallagher cutoff. So when I laid this all out, he goes, well, how do you know you're going to find this Gallagher cutoff, Sean? I said, well, I drive by it every day. I said, so I know right where it's at. He goes, oh, that's pretty sharp. So I said, all right. So we took off. He goes, all right, point to the Gallagher cutoff. I pointed to the Gallagher cutoff. He said, put your head down. We did some unusual latitude, steep turn around a red barn. He said, take it back, give me a soft field landing, and we're done. We went back, flopped it on the runway, taxied in. We get out. I mean, as soon as we're rolling in, it's in the middle of summer. It's hot, man. I mean, Crestview, Florida, bro. It is like 100 degrees in this plane. I'm with this big old dude. I mean, I'm sweating bullets. It's pouring off of me. And we're literally on the runway. He just whips the door open, and it felt like it dropped 30 degrees. We pull into park. I'm trying to get myself together. I'm thinking, this is terrible. I'm never going to pass. I walk up with him to Ray Mansfield, my instructor, and this guy goes, Ray, there's something wrong with that airplane. That thing is really hard to start. I'm like, yeah, I told you, Ray. I told you. So, long story short, I give a check ride. I go back in, finish up the package. We submit it that fall. I get accepted. And I'm here to tell you, I mean, my scores were good. Whatever. And on the AFOQT, everything was fine. It was competitive enough to get accepted to a board that didn't have enough applicants. So I'm very proud of that. If you call. So they actually didn't fill all the slots that year. So, so everybody got a slot that applied for one, pretty much. Yeah, it was tough. I didn't find that out until after I was in UPT. And I'm like, well, I'm here now, right? So, I go off to OTS, and I graduate from OTS. Y'all let me know if I'm boring you, and I can switch to something more entertaining. But I go.
No. This is a journey.
No,
I feel
going.
like it's the journey.
No.
I'm just on it.
Yeah, it's a good ride, man. I'm telling you, I'm still riding it. So I'm up at Maxwell, and I'm one of the only prior service guys in my flight. And I'm getting halfway through Maxwell to OTS, and I had this one guy off the street, my first roommate, great guy. He's retired in June because we're both running our clock's running out here for 28 years. And then so it's time to start picking, like, we're going to be the upper class, but you got to pick these positions to be in. So I'm like, well, I really don't want to be any more stressed than I am. So I'm going to go for a position that's called the upper flight commander, where you're just in charge of our flight. My group of guys, I think there was like 13 or 14 of us. I don't even, maybe it was 10. So I go to the flight commander, and I had to report into him and do all that stuff. And he goes, all right, Mr. Cross, he goes, I understand you want to be the UFC. He goes, why do you want to do that? I said, well, I've been leading my whole career. I think I'd be really good at organizing our flight, and it's going to take a lot of load off of you, sir. I'll keep everything going. That way you can chill and all this. I'm just giving him this BS, And
You can chill.
And he's like, okay. He goes, okay. He goes, but we had this one kid in our flight. I love him like a brother. I'm gonna throw his name out here in a minute. He's one of my best friends to this day. I'd do anything in the world for this guy. And so he goes, listen. He goes, whoever the upper flight commander is going to be, you're going to that person is going to now become roommates with Mr. Shira. Okay, and this guy was always 50 steps behind. He couldn't make his room. I mean, he was not as bad, nowhere near as bad as what's a guy in a Full Metal Jacket with the jelly donut pile. He was not pile. He liked jelly donuts, but he was not. What I'm saying, he wasn't pile. He was a great dude, but he was just a little bit behind us. And we're always, come on, Phil, always. So I'm thinking. So look, this guy, Captain Steve Ursel is his name. He says, Mr. Cross, whoever is going to be the UFC, you're going to be roommates with OT Shira. And I looked him right in the face and I said, okay, can you give me tonight to think about this? After I just asked her the job, man. So, and now I'm backtracking. True story, and Phil knows this. And I bet you Mattingly is watching right now. Mattingly's probably dying laughing because Mattingly was OTS too. And there was another guy in there. There was a bunch of them. They were all from Youngstown, Ohio. It was him, Joe Contino. Joe Contino's a wing commander up at some tanker unit up north. He's a character too, man. Let me tell you, great friend of mine. So we get through this stuff, and I end up taking the UFC position. So Phil becomes my roommate. Little did I know that Phil and I would become like best friends to this day. And we taught. You know how it is. You only keep in touch with like 2, maybe 3 guys throughout your entire career from back in the beginning. You know, and that you're close with. And Phil is that guy, and I love him like a brother. And I tell you, man, I'd do anything for him if he called me right now. And he helped me out in the next phase of my flying career that I'm gonna get to after pilot training. So Phil and I, we graduate from OTS, and we still to this day greet each other on the phone. And he'll call me, I'll call him, and he picks up. He goes, Cross, and I'm like, Phil, you know, like that. It's just this thing we do because that's what we would do in OTS. And like, Phil, you know, you can hear me all the way across the courtyard. So actually, I was at his wedding. Yeah, so I was at his wedding, and It was awesome. Yeah, I made a big toast to him and his bride, Tova. She's also a C-130 pilot. So we go to pilot training, and Phil was in the class before me. So Phil had it all warmed up for me by the time I got to Laughlin. But actually, before we went to Laughlin, now this is old school. Let's just show you guys how old I am. So the Air Force had a program in place. It was called flight screening. It was at Hondo, Texas. You remember that? So the Slingsby Firefly, right? The T3. Oh God, this thing crazy. So it was a fiberglass airplane, all this stuff, and I get there, and it's run by it's run by these civilian dudes, and it's these old crusty Vietnam era pilots. I mean, these guys are old, and I go in there, and I'm with these dudes or whatever, you know, and we're sitting there on the first day, getting ready to go in there and meet all these guys. We're sitting around in our getting to know each other circle. It's all these kids from all over the place, ROTC, all this stuff. And we're sitting in this room, and there's a kid in our room. He's an international student. I can't remember his first name, but he's foreign, and we're going around the room, and I start talking, you know, and everybody's listening to me because I won't shut up, you know, I'm taking all the time. So we get all the way around to this dude, and he introduces himself, and he says, "Hey, I'm such and such. I'm from Chile." I said, "Hey, partner." I said, "Where are you from, Chile?" And he just like that. He goes, "No, Chile is what you eat. I'm from Chile." I said, "Oh, okay, Chile. That's what I thought you said. I got you." So Dave Bacchino's probably rolling on the beach right now, laughing at me telling this story because he was sitting there. He lives down in Fort Walton. I think he's 06 now. So we roll back around. We get into flight screening, and I'm thinking like on the first week, guys. I mean, I'm dragging. I'm like, this is terrible. I mean, these guys, they treat you really bad. I mean, they're straight civilians. I'm like, this is horrible. I remember calling back to my parents. I said, I don't think I'm going to make it. I said, if UPT is like this, I said, I'm screwed. I'm never going to make this. I said, because I don't work really well under a microscope and all of that stuff, you know, and I'm like, this is, you know, I got to have some freedom to move around. So I get in a flight screen, and I remember there's this guy in there. He wore the Playboy patch. I mean, he was a Vietnam era fighter guy, right? It had the Playboy bunny ears on it. And his name was Glenn Mysick. And I was in his flight room, and he was a flight commander. And he's like, he literally on day one goes up to the podium. We get ready for stand up. And he goes, "Guys, if y'all want to do the Air Force a favor right now," he goes, "I'm just going to get the SIE paperwork, and y'all all just fill it out and just go away." I mean, that's how he started off. I mean, I'm thinking, wait a minute.
Perfect.
Don't talk to me like that. You know what I'm saying? This is crazy, man. So he ended up being hilarious. My instructor was this old Vietnam helicopter guy, and real crusty. I thought he hated me, but he actually liked me a lot. We hit it off well towards the end. And so if you remember with the T3, this was back when they were having all that trouble with it at the academy. Remember, you're shaking your head, Gonky. I see. Yeah, so it was the engines were going on. There was a couple of cadets who died and instructors in the crash and this thing. So, and I knew that going into it. Well, while I was there, I was 2 flights away from getting my check ride. And the guy comes over the PA system and says, "Attention on a compound," or whatever he says. He goes, "We are standing down immediately from higher headquarters. We've been ordered to stand down." And then we're all like, "What's going on?" So I've been around the Air Force for 8 years. I was enlisted. Most of these kids were off the street. They'd never been in. And they came in and said, "Yeah, another crash just happened at the academy. And they're standing down the program." And I looked at the guys, my classmates. I said, "That's like 2 or 3 cadets in the last year, 2 years." I said, "Guys, I'm just going to tell y'all, this is where I got my maturity came out, which rarely happens." And I said, "This program's done." I said, "We're not flying again." And they're like, "Oh, no, we'll be back up in about a week." I said, "No, I'm telling you, we're done. It's over with." So sure enough, about a week and a half goes by, and the squadron commander says, he calls everybody in. He goes, "Look, guys," he goes, "I don't know what to do." He goes, "Some of y'all are coming up on your UPT start date." He goes, "The Air Force has no clue what to do with this program right now." He says, "I'm just going to make a command decision." He was a major. He's fairly young. He says, "I'm going to sit down with the instructors, and this is like cutting hairs now." He goes, "We're going to review everybody's training folder. Anybody who's soloed, we're going to give you a certificate and let you go forward. If you didn't solo, we're not going to give you a certificate." So I'm thinking, okay, I soloed, so that's a good thing. You call it a solo. It's a supervised solo, old Krusty's in the right seat. And so I can't get my certificate, but the guy at the table with me, and I don't know what happened to his day, he didn't solo yet. So we fast forward. That was sometime in the summer of '97. And the Air Force says, "We're just sending people to UPT now." So I get to UPT, and we meet up in our class. 9815 is our class. We started September 13th, I think, in '97. And we're all in there. Some of the academy cadets knew each other. The Guard and Reserve guys, we kind of huddled off to the corner, having our little kumbaya, whatever, meeting each other, because you could tell we were the older guys, because the Zoomies, they were all 22 years old. They're over there giggling about SpongeBob SquarePants or something, because they've been pinned up for years. I mean, we've been bar hopping forever. These kids have no clue about the Air Force, so we're thinking, "Oh God, this is gonna be crazy. We got to watch these kids and all that." And I'm listening to everybody get to know each other, and we're asking like, "Hey, how'd you get here? Who went to Hondo?" There's only like a couple of us that went to Hondo. Everybody else went straight there. So this flight guy comes in, this Air Force pilot comes in all polished, and he says, "Okay, look, I need everybody to fill out this paper. I need you to tell me what your flight experience was. If you went to Hondo, do you have your private pilot's license?" Because now the Air Force is doing research, and we're the guinea pigs, because we were one of the first classes. He goes, "We're going to find out," and you know where I'm going with this, "if the Air Force really needs the flight screening program." So we're just going to throw you guys to the wolves and let y'all get in the old 6,000-pound dog whistle, the T-37, and have at it. So we had the one guy is up front row, and he was talking about it. I said his name was Chris Olmeyer. He flies to Southwest now. I said, "Chris, what did you just say?" He goes, "Yeah, you heard me. I've never been in an airplane in my life." He's never flown one. He's never been a passenger.
Wow.
And this dude's 6 weeks away from soloing a twin-engine jet, right? So
whoa,
he flies to Southwest. The program works, right? So everybody graduates in our class. And remember when I was talking about the guy from Chile? Excuse me, Chile.
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 Don't bully small countries. Gonky is renowned for bullying the smaller of the countries.
Y'all have to remember, I was educated at Harvard on a bayou. So he's up there, and he's in my class, and I'm thinking, "Oh, this is gonna be cool." We already hit it off once. So it's him and this other kid from Slovenia or something. His name was Alan de Beljac. We called him Double Jack. Phenomenal pilot. He had already flown Pilatus and everything. He was already a pilot when he got there. So we go through what is it? Life support stuff. You learn all about the equipment, everything. Academics for the first 2 weeks. And we're in life support training. We're going to go parasail. And they pull us way, way up in the air. Well, the dude from Chile is the first one to go. Very first one. They're like, oh, that's cool. We're taking pictures. We got our helmets on. Mattingly had the largest helmet. It's like, oh, yeah, dude. We all know he's got a big head, right? So,
like a Spaceball helmet.
Oh, yeah, dude, it's crazy, man. You could have put all three of us in this helmet. It's huge. So I'll pay for that one later. So my boy from Chile goes up, and we're like, oh, man, he's awful high, right? So he says, y'all sure this is safe? You know, we're tethered to this truck. They're pulling this dude all around the Caliche field. And he comes down, lands, does the PLF or whatever, shatters his leg. And we're all like, whoa, I didn't sign up for this now. I mean, and I leaned over to the instructor. I said, has this always happened? Oh, no, this is rare. I'm like, well, how rare are we talking here? So they end up washing him back. I don't know, like 6 months or whatever. He ended up finishing up, but we're all like, oh, don't think. So we get through all of that, academics, get into the tweet, into the sim, and sure enough, flight line day, right? We have stand-up EPs, and I don't know what it is about my last name. It's in college. I'm always the first one called on, whatever it is. I know it's coming. I'm ready for it. I'm like, it's going to be me. Sure enough, the guy gets up there. His name was Captain Freemuth. He was the stand-of-val dude. And I'll never forget this guy because he was married. His wife lived in San Antonio, and she'd call him on DSM like 3 times a day in the flight room. It was just like, you know, we'd pick up the phone, Captain Freemuth, that's your wife. You know, I mean, it was just, she's always calling this guy. So I'm like, we're trying to fly here. Can we brief? You know, so he goes down a list. He goes, all right, first up, how about Lieutenant Cross? I'm like, I was already on my way to the table because I knew it was going to happen, right? So I get up, and they give us something. I think it's I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something, and the correct thing was an abort, right? Which we're going to abort the takeoff roll. So I actually got up there and rocked this thing, right? And I mean, I just destroyed this thing. I don't know, for some reason, I guess that was the only thing I looked over the night before to kind of try and prepare out of the 12,000 pages of everything that we were responsible for on day one, right? Because they hand it all to you. Okay, you got to know everything for day one. And so, you know, whatever it was, throttles idle, max brake, something like that. And then they're like, okay, let's stop right there. And we're going to hand it off to the next guy. Because, you know, you either did bad or really good. So the next guy gets up and they offer him the opportunity. Okay. And it was, his name will come to me. Super sharp guy, man. He's ended up being a fighter pilot like y'all. So he's really smart. And so Willis, Darren Willis is his name. He was an academy. I think he's an academy guy too. Super sharp kid, man. He just destroyed pilot training. And he takes over behind me, and they said, okay, Lieutenant Willis, you can pick up where he left off, or you can go back and change anything you want. So now the first guy's, now he's sweating because, right, I'm sweating. I'm like, all right, this is how it's going to go. And you can see everybody's just sweating in buckets. So like, well, first off, they're glad because they know it's only 2 people that get called. But now they're sweating because tomorrow the odds are higher that they're going to get called. And I'm looking around the room. There's 25 dudes. I'm good for 12 days, baby. I'm strong, right? So I'm done. So Willis says, nope. He goes, sir, I'm going to take off right where he left off. And I'm like, whew, okay, that's good. Or is it not good? So you don't know. So we get through it. Darren does his thing. And then the flight commander gets up there, says a few words. He goes, great job. Let's keep this going, guys. Excellent job to the 2 of you. I'm like, yeah. Okay. I got 12 days of no pressure. So go through pilot training, finish T-37s. And, you know, I look back at pilot training and my time in 159th. I wanted to be a fighter pilot. And this is just profound, this moment. We get out into the area. The first time we go into this G awareness turn, right? You got to, 60 degrees of bank. You got to pull, I think it's, 3 to 6 Gs or something like that. It may have just been 3. I can't remember. There's no G suit in the T-37. So I just he goes, all right, I'm going to demonstrate one, I'm like, okay, got this. He does it. And he goes, you got to get on the G awareness, right? Tense up, do the breathing thing. And we do it. And I'm like, oh my God, oh, I weigh 400 pounds. What is this? What is this G thing, So at that moment, I realized, I'm like, I was not cut out to be a fighter pilot. Seriously. I mean, I learned even more when we started doing all that acro stuff. I'm like, okay, got it. It's cool, but I'd much rather have a tray table off to the side of me. I'm like, this is way too much freaking work, man. I'm out there G'ing it up. I'm doing all this stuff. I mean, I grayed out a couple of times. If you don't know what that means out there in the listening world, I mean, it's like literally the blood leaves your head and you see this little old dot, and then you let off the yoke. Magically, somehow your body's able to do that, and then everything comes back. And I'm like, what just happened? You know, you're upside down in the area. You got to recover. I mean, it's crazy. So I get through all of that, and we get to track night or track select, where pressure's really on. So I knew where I was going. I was going to fly the MC-130P Combat Shadow for Special Ops in the Air Force Reserve, because they got rid of the AC-130 gunship. I signed on with the 5th Special Operations Squadron at Duke Field. They had the Combat Shadow. The 711th had the A model gunships. They were getting rid of those, and they were going to fly to Combat Talon 1. So major transformation at Duke while I was at UPT. A lot of guys lost their jobs, all that stuff. And they didn't really lose their jobs, but they were kind of forced out, so they retired, moved on, did other things. Went to track select, and, you know, this is where it's cutting hairs, man. I mean, it literally goes down to one single test question on whether you're going to get a fighter track to the T-38 or T-1, or somebody gets to choose the helicopter. Well, everybody's like, oh, God, the helicopter, you don't want that. But we had this guy in our class, he wanted to be a helicopter pilot. So, I mean, everybody was like buying his lunch. You know what I'm saying? They're like, this dude, don't let this guy change his mind. He's taking the helo, right? Well, the other thing is, we don't know if there's going to be a helo on the track. I mean, there may not be a helo, so he's sweating. But they're still buying his lunch. Hell, I'm even buying his lunch to keep him happy, and I knew where I was going, right? So we get the track select, and we're standing up there, and it was literally an overhead projector. The T-37 squadron commander standing up there with a transparency, and they had the little airplanes printed on there. And he's like, okay, and they start with the number one guy all the way down to who's at the bottom. And the number one guy stands up, lieutenant, whoever. And it was either Lieutenant Willis or Mike Lineberger. It was one of those two guys. Super short. Lineberger, C-17s out of Charleston, reserves. And Willis was an active duty kid. And they're like, okay, just for example, Lineberger, where are you going? He goes, well, I already know where I'm going. I want the reserve T1. And they had the T1 with the R next to it, right? So, okay, strike that off. No big deal. Get the Willis, picks a T-38. We knew that. They get down like, you know, halfway, and there's like 138 left. And then there's like these T1s, and the helo dude is like next, right? So now he's been telling us this all these 6 months, but look, there's a lot of lunches bought. And we're thinking, is he really going to do this? I mean, because he's been telling us he is, but he could go T-38s. So, and there's one kid over there who's sweating because he wants that 38 bad. He knows, I mean, this is it. Depends on what this guy does. So he stands up, and he's real quiet. And he looks at us to the right, and he looks at us to the left, and he smiles. And they said, well, are you going to choose? He goes, yes, sir. He goes, I'm going to make my choice, and I hope my classmates are happy with me. He goes, I'm going to take the helo. And it was like, oh, God. He played it up. And the kid that wanted to fight it was like, oh, my God, he's crying, you know. So he gets to 38. It goes on down the line. It gets to me. I'm like at the bottom probably. Who knows where I was. I surely wasn't in the top 3. I can tell you that. So I said, so I get up there in my normal jovial self because, you know, I've got an audience, right? And you guys have seen me in action. Well, hell, I got an audience right here. It's 8:01. I'm still talking. I didn't shut up. So I get up there. I stand up. He's like, Lieutenant Cross, what are you going to pick? I said, sir, I said, you know, I wanted to be a fighter pilot, but after doing this tweet thing for 6 months, I am all about straight and level. I'm taking the reserve T1, you know, and the place just busts out in laughter. And he's laughing. He's almost crying, his colonel is. So I sit down. I go into the T1 squadron, have a ball, finish up pilot training. Not have a ball. It was tough. I'm not going to kid you. I had some tough times in pilot training. You guys know it's a lot of ups and downs. I mean, it is, you know, you're studying on a commode, you're studying at the stove, you get out the shower. I mean, it's insane, bro. And it's a fire hose for a year. And man, I'm telling you, I literally, the lowest point of my life was probably in T1s when I failed my second check ride, and I was going up for an 89 ride, and so yeah, so it was an elimination ride. So I go up with the DO to T1 squadron. Really nice guy. I'd flown with him once before, and I had just on my check ride. It was the nav check ride in T1, so it's this long, elaborate day, and it's just a lot of planning, days of planning, all the stuff. And we're out there on a check ride, phenomenal check pilot. And I do a go around at some Texas airfield, and I forgot to bring the flaps up. And we're climbing out, and we're going ahead, and I'm going through the briefing. And at some point, I'm briefing the next approach, and we're at, pattern altitude, pattern speed, or whatever. And I'm briefing the next approach, and I look over and to say something to him, and I look down. I swear it was like yesterday, and my heart just sank, and the flaps were at whatever increment. I got real quiet for a second. I looked out the window to my left like this, and I said to myself, I said, Jesus Christ, I just left the flaps down. And this was like this defining moment. And I had already busted another check ride, so I knew I was, going to be facing the gauntlet pretty heavy here. So I said, oh crap. I said, I just looked over, man. I just manned up to it. I said, look, we're going to go do this approach. And I said, and this great guy. And I said, you want me to do the go around again? I just looked at him. I just manned up to it. He said, yeah, why don't you do it again? I said, all right. He goes, you didn't overspeed anything, but he goes, yeah, you got to do it again. I said, all right, no problem. Went out, did the approach, came back in, got it, cleaned up the aircraft, had this beautiful fix to fix going back into Kelly. I planned this whole thing out where it would be an easy fix to fix. They don't even teach them anymore. One of the most difficult things. Why they even did it? Thank God for GPS, But look, all three of us, we learned on the whiz wheel and stuff. I mean, It was a lot tougher back then than what these kids are doing now. I mean, these kids are all iPad babies, so it's way easier. So I'm at the lowest point of my life. I go back to my room. I mean, literally, guys. I mean, I'm human. I was literally in tears. I'm like, this is it. It's over with. I called my dad. And I said, Dad, I think it's over with. I said, I busted another check ride. I said, and it was just like this moment you have with your father. And he says, Sean, he goes, you can do this. He goes, they're going to give you another check ride. I said, I don't know if they are, Dad. He goes, no, they're going to give you another check ride. I feel it. He goes, you can do this. Clean yourself up and just make it happen, son. It was one of those just defining talks you have with your father. And I said, all right. So I hang up the phone with him. Phone rings. This is back when we had landlines. I mean, this is literally the queue room phone. The phone rings. It was a flight room. They said, "Get your butt back in here," because when I failed it, I just walked straight out. I was so disgusted.
You failed the 89 ride?
No, that was the 88 ride.
Oh,
so
okay.
I was
Before
yeah.
that. Gotcha.
So I was
okay.
going up. Yeah. So and it was just I'd had the 88 ride already in my contact. My first check ride in the T1. So when I failed this one, I knew I was going to an 89 ride, which was, gotcha. It was contact and nav and formation were the three different phases of T1s. So I knew I was going to have to do an 89 ride. So I'm like, God, this is crazy. So they said, get back in here. They said, you're flying tomorrow morning, 7 o'clock takeoff with the soup. And I said, okay. I said, I'm coming back in. I'll be in 5 minutes. Clean myself up. They said, plan the whole thing out. The DO, the major, calls me in. He says, Sean, come down here in my office. He goes, look, he said, I heard they already briefed me on what happened. He said, I want you to plan a flight down to Laredo and back. That's all we're going to do. We're going to do one approach to a go around. He said, and we're coming back. I said, okay, got it. I planned it all out. I come in. He goes, all right. He goes, he looks at my thing. It was the little card with the fuel plan. He goes, yep, you're good. He goes, all right. He goes, let's go out to the plane. We go. Beautiful flight going down. The weather was clear. Winds were calm, all of this stuff. And he said, so I'm going in. I'm on approach. I've worked up, blah, blah, going around, doing my thing or whatever. He goes, all right. He goes, all right. He goes, I'll go ahead and take the plane now. He goes, I go like this. I'm thinking, all right, it's over. You know, I mean, I meant all of a sudden he goes, I got the aircraft for a minute. Yeah, that's it. And he didn't say anything. He goes, Sean, what do you want to do with these flaps? I freaking sink in the chair. I'm like, I look over and the flaps are up. He goes, I made you look. He goes, that was awesome. He goes, you sit back and chill. I got the plane. He goes, I got the plane and the radios all the way home. He goes, you take a nap if you want. He goes, you can nap. I don't care. I'm like, dude, there's no way I'm napping. I'm on pure energy here. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, I even grabbed him like, do you do this to everybody on an 89 ride? He goes, no, there's some that it actually is another 89 ride. He goes, no, you did great. We get back. It's Friday night. I'm in the O Club. I'm pounding Shiner box. I mean, I'm just, it's that dark beer. I put like 30 pounds on in pilot training. I mean, I know I look good now, but I was heavy back then. And so I'm standing next to the squadron commander, a female lieutenant colonel. Her name was Kim Lott. She was like the highest hour KC-10 driver in the Air Force. Really phenomenal squadron commander. And she goes, I heard about your ride today. She goes, I heard you did really well. She goes, I've already looked over all your folders. She goes, you're doing great. She goes, your problem is you just have checkride-itis. She goes, you can't let anything go. I'm like, I'm glad somebody figured that out and finally told me. So I get through it, graduate, family comes into town, all that stuff. My unit flies in the Combat Shadow.
Wow, that's awesome.
Oh yeah, they brought the plane in. I mean, my dad put my wings on my chest by the plane. I got pictures of it. It's great. My sister was there. My nephew, he was a newborn. It was just phenomenal. Mom, my two best friends from New Orleans flew in.
Wow.
I mean, it was great. We had the dining in. It was a phenomenal weekend. Such a relief. Drove all the way home 2 days later with a stop off in San Antonio to say goodbye and have a good time on a Riverwalk. Left West Texas. It was crazy going out there because I grew up in the Southeast. It's everything's green and there's water everywhere. And I'm driving from San Antonio that night headed to Del Rio, and all of a sudden it goes from green to brown. It's like somebody drew a line. And I remember passing through the border checkpoint, immigration checkpoint somewhere on Highway 90. And as lights are on, I'm like, man, what the hell have I gotten myself into? Maybe I took a wrong turn. I'm in Mexico already, you know? So anyway, left Texas was great to me. And I get back a couple of months later. I go off to Little Rock Air Force Base. Something happened at Little Rock. I don't know what it is. I found my aircraft. I get there to the C-130. I mean, I'm rocking, man. I mean, it was just a completely different environment. Maybe it's because there was green grass everywhere. I don't know. But I was back in the Southeast. Oh God. I'm so tired of tacos, you know, at that point. So I got some good barbecue because Texas has great barbecue. That's a whole nother episode. I'm a barbecue judge too. So we go to Little Rock, have a great time, see a real ice storm. I get into 130, and I mean, I'm rolling this plane on, man. I mean, one after the other. I mean, I'm doing really good. The guy comes to me, one of the majors. He goes, look, he called me Cajun. He goes, look, Cajun. He goes, I'm going to proficiency advance you. I said, what's that? I said, he goes, no, we're going to let you skip a ride. I said, oh, y'all do that? He goes, yeah. Didn't they do that to you in pilot training? I'm like, well, no, not really. I said, I used every flight to ensure I had, you know, a really good training foundation in pilot training.
Get some extras.
So, that's right. Get my flying time in. I want to be an airline pilot. So the proficiency advanced me. I go out there, you know, kick butt on the check ride, get through that. I come back, I had to go to survival school in Spokane. I did water survival out in Pensacola on that old gray ship out there. Yeah, I read between the lines on that one too. I made sure I was the last guy to go up and parasail. So I only spent like 15 minutes in a life raft while everybody else was freezing in March or whatever. So I played those cards. I'm pretty good at figuring things out. So I get through that, go to combat survival school, get the hell beat out of me for 5 days in the, you know, in POW camp and everything. Survived that, came home with a chest on my chest was bruised from top to bottom, you know, because they didn't like me too much. I don't know if it was my accent or what.
Talking? That's sear? Ooh.
Maybe because I talk too much. But so anyway, I learned how to keep my mouth shut in that kind of situation real quick. So I get through that, and they told me goodbye. Please don't ever come back. And I left that class, and I go through Albuquerque, where I had learned how to fly the Combat Shadow. So now here's the difference with the Guard and Reserve. So I was a reserve guy flying pro 3 days a week in the Combat Shadow before I went to Albuquerque, and there was a 4-month break. So when I get out to Albuquerque, man, we go fly pro the first day, and I'm flying with the squadron commander. And I had already had, I don't know, like 60 or 70 hours in the Shadow flying pro. And my classmates, they had never even flown the plane. So we got to fly pro, and he goes, well, let me explain to you, the squadron commanders tell me all this stuff about this plane. It's a little bit different than the EMIL. It's been a while since you've flown. I'm like, oh, okay, all right. So I get out there. I mean, I'm landing this thing like a 500-hour co-pilot. I mean, I'm just rolling it on every time on speed. Centerline. I mean, I'm just smoking this thing. And the engineer is just like, sir, you going to try one? Talking to aircraft commander. He goes, nah, I think I'm good. And I don't know what it was. I found my plane. So finally he takes one and he goes, he flops it on the runway. He goes, I'm good. Sean, why don't you take the rest? Yeah, you're good. So I flew the rest, and we get back. I get through Shadow School 4 months later. I get back to the line, and, great unit. Started flying the mission, and I couldn't really find my groove. It was something about it. I don't know. I just wasn't feeling it. And we're starting to come full circle. I'm getting back to the history of Western civilization. I'm going to close out with it. I got 47 minutes. I'm going to make it.
You got all the time in the world, man. We can go long if you need to.
So I finish up out there at Albuquerque. I'm back at Duke, flying local, flying TPs at night, not getting home till 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, man, this is brutal. This is a tough way to make a double TP. And I'm like, God, yeah, it is. It was tough, man. It was like 5-hour flights. I mean, I was like dragging, man. It was at night. You got to drive home an hour to Baker, hour and a half from Eglin. So I get up there, and I'm like, I'm not digging it. So a buddy of mine, one of my best friends to this day, Rob Light, who left Duke Field to go to Keesler to fly with the Hurricane Hunters. He's over there for like a year and a half. And the reason why he went, because his wife, she was we have casinos here in Biloxi, and she was a dancer at one of the casinos. They had like these Broadway shows at I think it was a casino. It was Casino Magic. That's what it was before Katrina destroyed it, which that's a whole nother episode too. I can talk about that one for hours. So he goes, Farmer, they call me Farmer Sean, because I was living on a farm. It's not really my official. I really don't have a call sign like y'all have Gonky and Mover, but a lot of guys
copy Farmer.
Gonky.
Yeah,
Gonky and Mover.
Yeah, a lot of guys call me Farmer, and because I was raising cows and hogs and all this stuff. That's episode 4. We'll come to that one. And so, like, he goes, Farmer, you got to get over here. I'm like, yeah, I don't know, man. He goes, this is home, Rob. I said, I don't want to do it. So he goes, man, I'm telling you, this is a good gig over here. So I had already gotten hired by the airlines. I was flying for a little-known airline out of Houston, Texas called Continental Express. This is when I circle back to my good friend Phil Shire. Phil told me, he goes, Sean, I'm at Continental Express training. He had been there for a couple of months. He goes, they're hiring guys with no time. He goes, this is when the ramp-up was happening. This is 2000, right? So Delta, all those guys, mid-90s, they all told me when I went off to UPT, they said, go get back, get to a regional. You're going to be at Delta with less than 1,000 hours. They're just going to vacuum people up. Okay, well, that was 96. What they were talking about just happened like a few years ago. So there's a big gap here with a lot of things that happened in the country. So I said, all right. I said, I'm going to do all of this stuff. So I'm going to follow this path. These guys will steer me in the right direction. Phil Shire calls me and goes, you got to get up here to Continental Express. I'm telling you, just fill out your resume. I only had like 450 hours total. I send my resume to Continental Express. The next day, they call me. I'm like, hey, this is Sean Cross. And we didn't have cell phones. This was landlines, bro. This is way old school, right?
Teletype.
They're like, yeah, this is paper tape and punch cards. Remember, I was ready for that.
Mm-hmm.
I was trained on that in the 80s. So they said, we'd like to invite you out to Houston for an interview. I said, oh, okay. I said, that sounds great. They said, when can you come out? I'm like, I said, I got this training going on. I said, it's 2 weeks before I can come out. Because I had to go to survival school. So I come back from survival, drove to Pensacola, caught an airplane, went out there. They put me up in some hotel. I don't even remember where it was. It was way out off the airfield somewhere at Intercontinental. And I go to this hotel, this old motel, you know, where you drive up to the doors. It's almost like something out of a Joe Pesci movie. I mean, it was really bizarre. And so I'm thinking somebody's pulling my leg here. So I check in. They're like, oh, yeah, Mr. Cross, we got your room for you, whatever. And I go to this room. I had my little suitcase and my coat and tie. And they're like, there's a paper told me when to meet. So I go in this room, this little like meeting room at this, I don't know, La Quinta, whatever it was. And yeah, it was pretty low grade. It's a regional airline, all right? So I go in there and these dudes walk in. I have no idea who these guys are. They're fairly young and they're captains at Continental Express. I'm like, man, these guys look young to be captains. I didn't know what I was getting into. And they said, all right, we got everybody's resume. We're going to start calling y'all in for interviews. And then if you're asked to come back at the afternoon session, we'll give you a time and you'll come back to this room and hang out. If not, you'll just leave directly from the interview. I'm like, all right. So I'm in there and I'm like, I had already known how to fill out the resume and I'd already partially done it. I'd actually done about 99% because Phil sent me copies, everything. So I was prepped. Like I had the gouge, right? I mean, I was freaking locked and loaded, right? So these dudes are all panicking, trying to fill this stuff out. I was all Excel spreadsheet. I was ready, bro. And my thing's just empty. I'm sitting there and they're like, you gonna fill this out? I'm like, fill what out? They're like, I'm already done. They're like, you didn't even touch it. I'm like, bro, I had this done a week ago. So this guy calls me in. He comes in, this old guy. He was the chief of hiring for Continental Express. I'm thinking, oh man, I'm toast. So we go in this room. It's a hotel room with the air conditioner, you know, down below the window. Windows, the curtains are pulled closed. I'm thinking, I'm waiting on somebody to jump out and knife me. I mean, it's crazy. And look, that's how bad it was.
The music starts playing.
There was literally a card table, and the mattresses were unbolted from the bed and the floor, and they were leaning up against the wall. I mean, this is some high-grade interview stuff here. So I'm talking to this guy. We sit down, and I knew he was the chief of hiring because I'd done a little research. And I had my hand up just like this because this is how I sit a lot. And I'm wearing a Breitling wristwatch, okay? Now, I didn't have money to wear Breitling. When I was in pilot training, my good friend Lamar Thigpen, who's a UPS pilot now, we hung up. We went to San Antonio every weekend. We go to the Randolph Air Show. He's over there filling out this card. I said, what are you doing? And this is, remember, I'm just a pilot, not an aviator, and this is going to show you why. He goes, Sean, I'm filling out this card. They're giving away a Breitling wristwatch. It's a Thunderbirds limited edition watch. I said, man, that's don't waste your time with that crap. I said, that's probably some Mickey Mouse thing, and it's like each wing is a hand, you know, at the hour. I think, what are you doing? I said exactly what I told him. There's no lie. I told him. So I said, Lamar, come on, let's go. He goes, Sean. Well, he called me something else. I'm not going to repeat already. But he goes, look, fill the card out. I said, all right, I'll fill the card out. So I fill the card out. We're walking around. We're hungover because we've been on a river walk all night. And like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I hear Sean Cross report to the Moretti's jewelry tent. He looks at me and grabs me. He goes, you won that freaking watch. So sure enough, I go over there and I meet the guy and he gives me the certificate. He goes, yeah, come by to the mall tomorrow and we'll get you to watch. So I'm like, all right, cool. So we go by Moretti's jewelry in this really high-end mall in San Antonio. Go in and I say high-end. There was no Target or Walmart connected to it at the time. So it was probably high-end, right? So I go in there and there is an armed guard outside this jewelry store. I'm thinking, okay, is this guy going to frisk me or what? So I go in there and the guy, he goes, oh, hey, Sean, welcome back. So he pulls out this box and he goes, let me size it for you. He gives me this Thunderbird wristwatch, you know. And I'm like, oh, it's cool, man. So I wear it all the way back to, and boy, he's just fuming all the way back to Del Rio. It's 144 miles. I can't believe you won that watch. I should have never told you. So fast forward, I'm sitting in a room with Mr. I think it was, his last name was Dresser, John Dresser or something like that. So we're sitting there and I put my hand up like this. He goes, and he's looking at my paperwork. He goes, Sean, he goes, is that a Breitling wristwatch you wear? I said, well, yes, it is. I said, you want to check it out? I pop it off and I hand it to him just like that. Just like I'm talking to you right now. I said, you know what? I said, there's a really cool story behind that watch. I said, you want to hear it? He goes, yeah, why don't you put it on me? I said, all right. So I just told him the story that I just told y'all. I tell him all through this story, and I'm taking to it, and I'm jazzing it up. And this is an airline interview now. And he goes, huh. He goes, that's a fine timepiece. And he goes, that's one hell of a story. He goes, I'm looking at your resume here. He goes, looks like you had a really tough time with Western civilization too. And I said, you know what's up, Mr. Dresser? Yeah. I knew that History of the World Part 2 was going to come back to haunt me at some point in my life. And here we are today, 6 years later. I said, let me tell you, I hated that class, and I just stuck with it until I finally knocked it out, and I made it happen. He goes, let me ask you a question, John. And I'm like, here it goes. I'm like, this is where he's going to get me. He goes, if I was to ask you a question about what's your knowledge level of the FAR aim, we're getting serious now. He's pulling out the reg. He goes, your knowledge level of the FAR aim, okay? For anybody who doesn't fly, that's the regs, right? Federal Aviation Regulation, Airman Information Manual, right? He goes, I said, what do you mean, like from 1 to 10? And I kind of knew that's what he was talking about because that was the guy I was trying. Everybody said they're going to ask about your knowledge. I said, well, I'll tell you what. I said, and I answered, no, let me back up. He goes, what's your knowledge level of the FAR aim? I said, the FAR aim, like that. He says, yeah, you heard of it. I said, yeah, I've heard of it. He goes, that was my answer. I swear to God. Yeah, I said, that was my answer. I said, I've heard of it. He says, well, he goes, I'll tell you what, Sean. He says, your time to come back is 1 o'clock. And I started writing something down in a corner of my resume or whatever, and he circled it. I said, I'll tell you what, Mr. Dresser, when I come back at 1 o'clock, I'm going to let you tell me what my knowledge level of the FAR aim is, and we'll just leave it at that. And I started laughing, and he started laughing too. He said, man, he goes, go ahead. I'll see you at 1 o'clock. So at 1 o'clock comes, I'm thinking, so there's only a few of us in there, and I'd seen people walk by the window, the walk of shame, right, at that fabulous hotel room we were operating out of. And these two captains come in, and they walk in, they close the door, and they close the curtains. I'm like, okay, here it comes. I'm like, this is where the juggling clown comes out or something, you know. I mean, they're gonna drink some Kool-Aid, have some Kool-Aid, you know. I'm thinking this is it, right? So the guy goes, he says, they start calling out names, and they're going down alphabetical order and who gets what or whatever. And he goes, they get to my name, and he goes, yeah, you'll get, some guys were getting to Brazil, yeah, because they were still flying at ATR, Newark, Cleveland, whatever. And they said, Sean Cross, and they goes, you got the jet to Houston, which is what I wanted. And I'm like, all right, cool. So they hand me my resume or whatever it was, some kind of whole, and then it was the paper that Mr. Dresser had, and in the upper right-hand corner, circled in his handwriting, it said the EMB 145, and he circled it. So he had already placed me in a jet during the interview. And I'm just going to tell you, it was all based on just shooting a breeze and that Breitling wristwatch, Lamar Thigpen, because that's what got me hired. So I go get trained on the EMB 145, which the Embraer, which is a great jet. I mean, I'd fly it today. It was so much fun. And I was on the books with those guys for, I don't know, 8 or 9 years. Got hired there in March of 2000, lived in a crash pad in Houston during that one summer. Had time of my life. We were running a crash pad, me and these other guys. It was poolside. The flight attendants were hanging out. Oh my God. Pre-camera phone life was great. Miss it. It was so much fun. And we had such a great time. And I felt like I was really an aviator at that point in my career. We get through that. And then I circle back to the Hurricane Hunters. And that's when he says, Farmer, you got to come check it out. And I was with Continental Express at the time. So I go in an interview with a guy by the name of Bill Sims. And this is before I told the fifth. I said, let me just go feel it out just to see what it's like. So I go into the pilot room there at 53rd. Bill Sims, an Auburn guy, and he was a silverback. So he was up there close to his retirement. He goes, man, Sean, he goes, we'd love to hire you. He goes, the problem is we just don't have a place for you. Oh, here we go again. I've heard this before, you know. I'm like, that's all right, Mr. Sims, Colonel Sims. I said, I appreciate it. You know, look, I said, you know, I'm interested, whatever. He called me back like a month later. He goes, look, we're already heavy on overages. I talked to the wing commander who was a general, and he said there was one kid we were looking at. I was a first lieutenant. He said, we really want to hire this kid out of Duke. And he said, yeah, I authorize an overage. I went in, I talked to the guys at Duke, and I said, look, I said, this is really hard for me to have this conversation. And I said, I'm not backdooring y'all or whatever. I said, y'all have been so good to me. I said, but I'm just not having a good time at this. I said, at my point in my career, I should be enjoying the mission that I'm flying. And I really don't like it. I said, it's just, I don't think I'm cut out for it. And, you know, we had some, you know, it was some tough conversations, but good. I mean, they were really good to me. The DO and the squadron commander were very supportive. Brett Clark was my DO. He's a retired 06 guy, phenomenal guy. He's somewhere up in Georgia now. And he's like, Sean, I fully support you. He goes, I don't want you to be unhappy. He goes, you're going to still be in the reserves. The reserves paid for you to be here. We're going to let you go. I went to the Hurricane Hunters, the 53rd Weather Reconnaissance Squadron. I went on my birthday in 2001, and I've never looked back. Wow. And at that point, my career just started to take off. I found my groove in life. Oh, God, man, I tell you, the 53rd Weather Reconnaissance Squadron, the Hurricane Hunters, I cannot say enough about them and the Air Force Reserve. You know, there's a quote out there Chuck Yeager said, and he said, everything I am, I owe it to the Air Force Reserve. And I'm telling you right now, I use that quote right now. I truly believe I was destined to be in the Air Force Reserve and a part of the 53rd Weather Reconnaissance Squadron. I mean, my career has just taken, I don't even know how to say it. I mean, I've been blessed. I mean, I've been all over the Caribbean. I've seen phenomenal things that people only see on TV. I mean, I literally have touched the heavens. I've been to Hawaii, I don't know how many times. I've been over to Europe once or twice. But to get to this point in my career, 28 years of flying now, and have been in almost 36, to be a part of this incredible unit, to be able to do the things I've done and meet the people that I have met, and the times that I've spent on the air doing interviews and all, and the kids that I've helped recruit, man, I'll tell you, if I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't change a thing. I'm telling you, it has been it has been one hell of a ride. And the general just signed up at headquarters Air Force Reserve. I'm hitting the wall 1 June of 2025, where I'm forced out of 28 years commissioned service. And Mover, you sat in on my brief. True story. Didn't I brief this last UTA? I said, guys, you know, talking about this safety and risk management stuff, I said, I got a lot going on. I said, I had these medical things going on when I was grounded for 19 months. It was a lot that really affected my career, and I don't know if I'd be able to stay in the cockpit forever, but I got through the medical stuff. I just got my check ride Friday. I was able to make that happen. Literally, Mover, I took the check ride, went to grab something to eat and check the mail at the P.O. box, and I get a call from Colonel Fish, and he said, hey, did you check your email? I said, no, sir, I haven't. He goes, your extension just came through. I'm like, oh, my God. I'm like, what a day. I said, after UTA, of all of that stuff I've been briefing everybody, I said, I knocked out my check ride and I got my extension for 2 more years within 2 hours of each other. And it was like the biggest relief, you know, Friday afternoon. I'm just like, went into the weekend just like so relieved. So I get to stay around and play till 30 June of 2027. And I'll ask for a year or so past that to get to age 57, which is our retirement date. And that'll put me right at 39 years. And, you know, at that point, I'll evaluate. Yeah. I'm actually, my goal is to go to 40. You know, I passed on 06. I could have made 06, but in the reserves, you have to move. You got to go somewhere else. And that was a tough call, but an easy call, because, you know, I think everybody aspires to be an 06 when you join, because, you know, we're all born leaders, especially if you want to be a pilot, because pilots run the Air Force. In order to get to the top, you got to have a set of wings on your chest. And I knew I always wanted to be at the top, because I always strive to be up there with whatever I do. And, you know, I pass on that because, you know, I'm a family man now. I've got a son. He's a freshman in high school. My wife, we have businesses here on the coast. We're embedded very deep here on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. And I wasn't going to geo-batch and leave them. I said, I'm not going to uproot them from this. I said, we've built a good life for ourselves. And I'm going to stay right here. And, you know, I had quite a few people ask me, like, are you sure? And I said, yeah, it's written on the wall. I said, this is my home, man. I said, the 53rd, I said, the 403rd Wing, I said, they have been spectacular to me and my family. And I said, I'm not going to leave it. I said, no offense, But I said, I think I could be more effective as an 05 right here at the 403rd Wing than I could be as an 06 in a cubicle somewhere else. I said, I got to be honest with you. I said, and I found my calling later on in safety. Nobody wanted the job. Colonel Van Duding was a wing commander, and he called me in his office. He said, Sean, he goes, look, I'm just going to tell you. He said, the other guy was moving on. He had a vacancy there, and I was always told, avoid safety like the plague. Don't go in that office, you know. And he called me in, and he said, look, he goes, I'm not interviewing anybody. He goes, I need somebody who can talk. If y'all hadn't figured that out, I can talk. And I'm sorry, I just let that out. I'm sorry. So I do. I go in there and I said, look, I said, Colonel Van Duding, they called him VD. And I said, I'm not laughing. I don't know why. I don't know what his nickname. I'll never ask him. I love him to death. One of the greatest wing commanders or officers I've ever worked with. Phenomenal. I said, sir, I said, he said, go think about it. That's all right. I'll think about it. So as any good reservist does now, I go back to my office. I go home. I get on my cell phone. I call him. First person I call somebody who was a former chief of safety, silverback, retired, great friend of mine. His name's Roger Gardner, famous hurricane hunter. He retired after years. I said, Roger, it's Sean. He goes, what's up, man? I said, I got a question. I said, the boss wants me to be chief of safety. And this was classic Roger. Any silverback senior air reserve technician says, all right. He said, Sean, he goes, the first thing you should be asking yourself is when's the next inspection? It's so classic because it's true. It's true.
That's good advice.
Yeah, it is. It's great advice. I said, Roger, it's a year away. He goes, well, who are you coming in behind? I said, well, a guy by the name of Dave Gentile. I said, I hired him, about a year and a half ago. He's a great guy. He goes, well, how good is he in the office? I said, I don't really know because we've been on COVID, so nobody's been there. I said, so I don't know what to tell you. He goes, well, that's what you got to think about. So I called another former chief of safety, Jeff Ragoose, and I said, Jeff, just to ask me to be. He goes, Sean, he goes, if I had to pick one person in the wing to do that job, he goes, it would have been you years ago. He goes, because you can talk. He goes, and you got to be able to talk to take that job. So I said, all right. So I thought about it, talked about my family and everything. I said, yeah, I got this opportunity. So I went in there and I called Colonel Van Duding. I said, all right, I'm going to do it. He goes, all right, I'm going to get you safety school right away. Well, during COVID, I had to do everything in this room virtually. I had like 5 weeks of schools. Oh, God, it was horrible. I'm thinking, what have I gotten myself into? I mean, my son was at home, COVID. I'm trying to homeschool him for 6 weeks. I'm not an educator. I'm like beating him over the head with a tennis racket. Pay attention. I think it was horrible. I was literally on the floor on pillows. My wife walks by. She goes, my God, what's wrong with you? I said, I'm looking at the door. I'm like, I'm in this virtual class. I'm dying. I am regretting getting into this safety thing. It's horrible. Get through all of that. And then I realized, I'm like, I think I found my calling. I said, I'm still flying and I'm digging this safety thing. I get through the first inspection and then I'm like, okay, I can breathe now. I know what they want. And I love it. I like safety. I don't know what it is. There's something about it. I think it's because, okay, let's be honest. It's because I get to get up and talk in front of everybody. My dad, that's what it is. Yeah. That's what it is, man.
You're brief. You're so quick.
Yeah. Well, we just finished answering how did we get into aviation. So we've accomplished one question in an hour and a half.
Yeah. So my dad,
at this rate.
Yeah, we're in trouble. That's all right. I told you episodes 2, 3, and 4.
Let's take a quick breather and get to the audience real quick because they may have piled up. Yeah, John says, remember he's still on the first question. How'd you get in aviation?
Yeah, I'm sorry, John. I'm
moving backwards here. Crazy Pete, C-130 FE says you excelled in the 130 because you had a great FE, right, sir?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I still, to this day, when I finish up a checklist, I reach over and tap the co-pilot on the shoulder, before landing checklist complete. Because the engineers, the FEs, whenever they would call a checklist complete, they would reach forward with their hands and they'd touch both pilots on the shoulders. So in case it's busy on a headset, you'd get that, that cue that the checklist is complete. So when I went to Continental Express, I would always tap my flying partner on the arm. I'd say, yeah, before landing checklist complete or whatever. And so, like, halfway through our sims, he's like, can we stop for a second? I said, yeah, what's up? He goes, why are you always touching me when you call a check? Yeah, and the instructor's like, yeah, I was wondering the same thing. What are you doing? So after that,
Navy thing.
he calls the checklist, and my right arm, just say my right arm, he goes, checklist complete, and he pokes me like that. Checklist complete. Checklist complete. It was hilarious. His name is Chris Burrell. He's at United. He's a great guy. Yeah.
Hidden Force.
88, 89 rides.
Yeah, elimination rides. Basically, you get to a point in your training, and then they say, okay, we need to evaluate whether you can continue with the program. So the 88 is pre-elimination. 89 is, if you don't pass this, see you later. So essentially. Yep. Aaron says, lived in the Triangle, 332nd behind the post office. The 2 a.m. departures bring back some memories. I also passed history of Western Civ with a D on my second attempt.
Should have went to Delgado, dude.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Nathan would like to know if you know Major D Gotro.
Yep, okay. I know Goat very well. Good friend of mine. Another Louisiana boy.
2 bags. What's up, Shanghai?
Shanghai, yeah.
I'm betting Sean knew legendary Chief Master Sergeant J.J. Volmuth. I was at OTS with his son, Mike, who became a B-52 Nav, retired as Lieutenant Colonel. Awesome dude. Apple didn't far from that tree. I don't know. Do you know that?
A name sounds familiar. I can't think. It's been a long time, so I'm having to think back on that one. Volmuth. That sounds really.
We'll circle back.
Familiar. Yeah, we'll come back to
it. Elias says, super wild. That show is what got me interested in weather guesser aspect of flying. That's your 15 episodes of the Weather Channel he's referring to.
Cumulus Count.
Yeah, an hour and a half ago.
Cumulus Count. Yeah. Sorry, that was at the beginning. Yeah, it was called the Hurricane Hunters, and we're still out there. If you just Google Major Sean Cross Hurricane Hunter, it'll bring up one of those. I think it was the Irene episode of season 1 or 2. I can't remember exactly what it was.
And then tune in, drop out. Any thoughts on all these drone sightings?
No comment.
I'll because he's kind enough to throw Gonky $10. I will say that I did a whole video on it. The internet is now mad at me. So we did a video on it last week with Casmo.
Yeah. And it's
I
out
think
today.
People are going to be disappointed when they find out that they're filming airliners.
And helicopters.
But there is a drone threat. I will say that there is an
100%.
overarching drone threat for sure.
Yeah. Hey, even in hurricanes, there was they had some drones that they flew at one point in time as a test.
Did they really?
So it was called the Coyote drone. Yeah, it's called the Coyote. It's probably about 6 inches in diameter and it was a Navy buoy tube or whatever that it fit in. I can't remember the number on the Navy buoy that we dropped, but anyway, they launched. It was called a Coyote. You can research it, but they splashed just about every time. They just couldn't handle the turbulence like the C-130 can. Yeah,
like a Delta flight, chop. No, Luna is here, by the way, in case you guys were wondering. She's
physically here. I think she's sawing logs.
Is that Mover? Is that your pup?
Yeah, that's Luna. She was a drill. I brought her. She's therapy dog.
Right. Yeah, the therapy dog. Yeah. That's a big
she's
deal.
giving me therapy now as she sleeps. Aggie jet pilot. Howdy, Dr. Cross. See you in a few UTAs. Broken leg. Guess I'm not good at safety. What?
Oh, that's Aggie jet pilot. Well, the only other person that calls me Dr. Cross is a Southwest guy. Aggie jet pilot. Who is that?
Well, don't dox him. He may not want to be known on this.
I'm just trying to think who that
widely proliferated talk show we have here.
Yeah.
You
it's
will
probably right on the tip of my tongue, but.
And then Davey says, after a year out of the cockpit, I've returned to flying the T6. Thanks for the motivation. And 2 more things. One, viewer BJ, this is BJ's birthday. So happy birthday, BJ.
Happy birthday, BJ.
Hey, happy birthday.
Less like good news, really bad news. A CBP or a helicopter crashed on the San Diego County border in Southern California and lost the life of a pilot. So that's aviation's a dangerous business, and we feel for that community as well. But anyway, there's BJ Mahalo. Gonky, did you have a question for our guest? Since I already asked a question.
We've only got 19 minutes left.
No, I'm good.
So now I want to know, because you told me this first time we talked about, you did the airline thing and said, you know what, I want to do full-time hurricane hunting.
Yeah.
What made you decide to give that up and just be a full-time hurricane hunter? And let's talk about the hurricane hunter mission. What is it and why is it so special?
Okay, so yeah, just real quick through the airline thing, it just didn't appeal to me. And I think, God, can be one of the most highest paid, boring jobs out there. I mean, you're sitting there for hours on end watching the DME click off at 30-something thousand feet. I mean, I got stuff to do on the ground. I mean, so I don't know. That got to me. And then, I mean, no offense, but I flew with some of the most incredible guys at that RJ community over at Continental Express. But there were some guys, you had to just pry a conversation out of them. And I'm like, man, I got to do this for another 35 years. This could be tough. And then I just realized I like to be at home at night. And, I was sitting in Concourse B there watching all these people with their families walk by on vacation. And I'm thinking, man, all I'm doing is hauling these guys around. So I figured out real quick, I didn't care for it. So I'm like, I'm just going to do the full-time thing with the reserves. I said, I'm enjoying going on the road with the hurricane hunters. I mean, I was just going to 2 or 3 air shows a month. I mean, I was going down to St. Croix, flying through the hurricanes, having a ball. I was like, this is for me. I'm like, this is what I want to do full-time. So I came on eventually as a technician. It took me all the way to 2008. So I probably had the record as a bum in the squadron for a long time. I mean, it was a long time. Yeah, it was a long time. Back then, the slots weren't open. Right now, oh man, we got some openings if anybody's looking. So,
Gonky.
I started some paperwork today, Mover.
Yeah. So, and look, when y'all have me on again, we'll go into full detail about the hurricane hunting mission. But I'm going to give you some tidbits about it. It's a very rewarding mission. It's got a real-time effect to it because we will be out there flying for 4 or 5 hours in the storm. And then when we land, you turn on the Weather Channel or whatever, not trying to give those guys a plug, whoever you watch, and CNN, and you can see the real-time effect of what you're doing because of the data that we collect. It's immediate from the aircraft. So just to show you real quick, I did bring a little show and tell. This is the drop sign. This is the new and improved one. Okay, this takes our vertical measurement in the storm. All right, this is the newest one. The older one's a little bit bigger. And I just brought it just because I'll show you what the parachute looks like, the little drogue chute. So this is the old one right here. And it's all it is like a flying cell phone, sort of, right? So every 10 feet as it's falling through the atmosphere, it's taking a snapshot, temperature, pressure, winds, and humidity. It's sending all of that information back to the aircraft. On the screen at the Loadmaster pallet, it's just a bunch of numbers. I can't read it right because I'm just a pilot. Those guys are weather experts. They can read all this stuff. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Just do your nerd thing. I'll just fly the bus, right?
Nerd thing.
and look good on camera, right? So I do all this stuff, and they take all of this information, all right, and they compile build what's called a vortex data message, all right? And that message is built on the aircraft by the onboard meteorologist. So the meteorologist is looking out the window. They're what they see visually because they're still taking a visual observation of what the hurricane looks like on the inside. Is it an open eye? Does it have the stadium effect? What do they see? Can they see the surface? So they create this message. They take all of that data from the drop sign, and then they snapshot this thing up through space, right? We've got a satellite uplink on a plane, goes down to the National Hurricane Center in Miami. And then they take all of that data and then they plug it into their forecast model. And then that's how they get the cone that you see on TV. Like, here's the forecast cone. If you're in it, there's probability you're going to experience hurricane force conditions. And obviously, as it gets closer to land, where there's always shifting, and the cone will get smaller as it gets closer to landfall. So that's the gist. That's the vertical measurement. The horizontal measurement, there's a couple of things that the meteorologists are doing by looking out the window. There's a couple of sensors on the plane. There's really not a lot of equipment on the aircraft. But the information is derived from those drop signs that I just showed you. It's invaluable. You can't put a price on it because to this day, no matter how good our technology is, you cannot extract the lowest center of pressure out of a storm unless you put a manned aircraft in it. And we punch right through the eye wall at 10,000 feet. A lot of people ask me, hey, you come over the top and drop it. No, we go right through the eye wall. We punch right through the belly of the beast. We're at 180 knots. That's a thunderstorm penetration airspeed. That's the airspeed that the engineers have calculated to cause minimal stress to the airframe. And we go right through. We're flying in a crab as we cut through the eye wall because we're flying what the autopilot has set up for us. So we're kind of slicing through at an angle. And then at a certain point, we will kick off the autopilot. And then I'm going to steer the aircraft, the lateral movement of the plane, to get to that lowest center of pressure. So this is when the RWO comes in. It's very coordinated between the 5 crew members. We've got 2 pilots, a navigator, the weather officer, and the load master. And I'm going to call the weather officer RWO. The RWO will ask for heading changes, okay? 5 left, 5 right, maybe 30 left, 30 right. Just depends on as they're chasing to that lowest center of pressure. And we're doing it all off of winds, okay? And I know as a pilot that the wind direction has to always be pointed right at my wingtip on the left side because it's counterclockwise circulation. So I'm always anticipating his turn based on where the wind arrow is in direction to my wings. So I'm looking at the navigation page and I can see the wind arrow. So I know he's getting ready to ask for a right turn or left turn. So he'll ask for a turn. The navigator will then say, give me a numerical heading. That tells me he's looked at the radar and cleared us of any bad stuff, but we're going to punch through some pretty wicked stuff anyway. And then I'll turn the aircraft to chase that lowest center pressure. We'll punch through the eye wall. We're flying a pressure gradient at 2992, which is 10,000 feet pressure altitude. We'll take that gradient all the way down. So like in Hurricane Michael, the pressure was extremely deep. October 2018 when he made landfall, and this is my worst flight ever. I had the landfall mission. I'm looking over, my co-pilot had his iPad up, and it was tied to the GPS Stratus, so we could see what our absolute radar altimeter was. So we started at 10,000 foot pressure on the inbound run at 105 nautical miles out. When we came through the eye wall and we bottomed out, and I had to pull the throttles back so we don't overspeed the aircraft because you're descending. We bottomed out at 8,000 feet. So we descended 2,000 feet to hold that pressure gradient. So in the eye, we're at 8,000 feet radar altimeter, but our instruments say 10,000 feet pressure because we're flying 2992. So there was very, very deep pressure in Michael. I've actually flown deeper pressure than that in the Gulf of Mexico basin, Hurricane Wilma in 2005. But so we'll do that. Then we'll fix the storm. And when I say fix, we'll establish the lowest center of pressure based on latitude and longitude. So we kind of drop a crumb. Okay. And then we'll go out the opposite direction, go out to 105 nautical miles. We'll make a left turn, come out on the down one leg. We'll set up on an intercardinal heading again at 105 nautical miles out, and we'll drive in. So what that does is it gives us 4 fixes or penetrations of the storm in a 5-hour period. It takes us about 1 hour and 20 minutes to fly that triangle, and that triangle is called an alpha pattern. So we'll do 4 alpha patterns in a storm normally. If it's going to be a landfall mission, you'll hear guys around the wing talk about pennies. That's how many times you penetrate the storm. I've got 176 penetrations of hurricanes. And every time you fix the center, that's a penetration. So where you really rack up is when you're doing shore patrol, when it's close and you can't do that full alpha pattern because we don't fly over land. We only fly over water. So you do shore patrol and you go back and forth through the eye. And I've done that. I think the most pennies I had was like 7, maybe 8 in a storm. And you're humping it. You're going back and forth through it. And you could be getting beat up pretty good. That's kind of in a gist how everything works. There's other missions we do. There's a low-level invest, and I'm watching the time because I know we're getting close. The low-level invest is the first type of mission that we fly. That's when we go out into a very large area of low pressure, and we fly around at 500 feet. And we break up this low area of pressure into 4 quadrants. And what we do is we just kind of loiter in each of those quadrants. And what we're doing is we're looking for counterclockwise winds at the surface. If we have that counterclockwise circulation at the surface, then we'll close off the storm. And then that's when we climb up to 5,000 or 10,000 and we'll start fixing the storm and dropping SONs from altitude like I just told you about. So that, and then there's a synoptic mission that's flown from 30,000 feet. We'll drop SONs and we're basically measuring the thermodynamic wind field around the storm. That's like being an airline pilot. They're long and boring. And then we have buoy missions, which is great because we fly low and slow, and we open up the back of the aircraft and we throw stuff out. So that's a lot of fun for pilots.
So what's the average sortie length? for a hurricane mission?
Depends on where the storm is in relation to land, where we're operating from. All we need is a runway and a cell phone and an internet signal. We can operate out of a hotel room anywhere in the world. So if we're close to it, it's going to be a shorter mission. Average mission is usually anywhere from 10 to 12 and a half hours.
Oh,
yeah. Okay. I've got the squadron record, 14.4.
Wow.
Yeah. It was my first hurricane mission back in 2001, Hurricane Aaron. It was excruciating, and there was only 2 pilots on board. I'd watch the sun go down, leaving Keesler, and then I watched the sun come back up the next morning over Bermuda, and then I had to recover all the way to St. Croix in the Virgin Islands.
Wow.
It was insane. I literally flew that storm. It was my first storm, and I said, I think I might go back to Duke.
Yeah.
Wow.
As soon as I heard the missions, I was like, "Ooh, that's a long time."
Yeah, it's long. We usually take 3 pilots, so we can kind of cycle through the seats.
Yeah. Joe says should show Sean Gonky the Herc pilot. I don't know if you've seen this, but Gonky is also a famous C-130 pilot himself.
I like it.
I was just trying it on.
Yeah.
How'd it feel?
It's all right.
Felt like a long time in that seat is what it sounds like. Thomas says Gonky a hurricane hunter. Alex, it's the same thing. All right. Mental health. Since you've been talking a long time, we figured we would let you lead off with this as well. Because this was your mental health minute.
I've been talking for an hour and 53 minutes.
You are a professional. But you actually talked about it in your safety brief at the UTA. You know, you've safety and I think mental health go hand in hand in a lot of ways. I'll let you kick off the mental health minute. I think you've got a good handle on it.
Yeah. First, thanks for having me on.
I've really
enjoyed it.
Oh, thanks.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Mental health it's a big deal today. You know, I hear things about people that I've known for years, and it's like, whoa, how did I not catch that? And people I've been close to. So, you know, we're coming into that time of year where, you know, not everybody has a family, and a lot of people are on their own, and they're hurting. They're going through a lot of really, really tough things out there. So, you know, don't be afraid to pick up that phone and reach out to somebody you haven't talked to in a while and just check in on them and see how things are going. Because there's a lot of people struggling right now, you know, whether they're homeless or, you know, or they live in a 5,000 square foot house, they may be lonely, you know? So, yeah, reach out to your buds, man. And that, you know, helps strengthen that mental health with everybody. I mean, it may be somebody in your household, and it may be your closest next door neighbor, maybe somebody you just bump into at Winn-Dixie. So just think about that. Well, Winn-Dixie went out of business. That's a bad analogy.
No, there's a Winn-Dixie right by. No, we got one down the road.
Yeah.
We got one down
the road.
Yeah, the beef people. That's a great grocery store. I'll lead in with that much. I'll take over.
Gonky.
Yeah, looking out for each other is important. I mean, in the fighter world, right, you always have a wingman. So I don't know. The way I look at it is, you know, sometimes you can't see it, you know, but maybe somebody close to you can, or maybe you're the one that sees it, right? And I get it. Sometimes, you know, people don't want to be told, but I think it is important to look after each other because, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, if you don't see it and somebody else doesn't bring it up, things will fester. You know, I mean, Sean, you know, I'm a Christian. I go to church, and my pastor talks all the time about the importance of community and getting involved. And part of that is just so you can learn about each other. You know, celebrate the good times, work through the bad times, and that, you know, that starts with getting out there and just getting involved. So, I mean, have a good wingman. Be a good wingman. Mover.
Yeah, I'm lucky I got a good wingman right here.
That was excellent.
She's a good dog. Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a tough time of year for people. One thing, you know, I was thinking about when Sean was talking, you'll never regret reaching out to somebody, but you will regret when you did. You know, if something happens and, you know, you've been putting it off, and next thing you know, it's too late, and you're like, why didn't I just pick up the phone or send a text message or an email just saying, hey, I'm thinking about you. How's it going? To me, it's not just the holidays. It's a year-round thing, but the holidays can be especially painful for some people, especially those that have dealt with any kind of loss. I mean, I know that I lost my mom 2 days after Christmas. So, the holidays have always been a tough time for me, since I was 12 years old. But people associate that, I've talked about this on other episodes and other channels where if, when you lose somebody, that day becomes your anniversary, regardless of what it is. That's a day you start thinking about every year. And those that have it anywhere within the 3-month window of the holidays, that's going to be tough because you're always thinking about, well, that's the last time we did this. That's the last time we did that. So if you have to have that cognizance of the people in your life and go, hey, are you okay? Do you want to do something? Do you want to talk? Or just nothing. Sometimes people just want to be left alone, but that's part of being a good wingman, being a good friend. Like Gonky talked about, as fighter pilots, as airline pilots, as crew pilots, we work together. Even as a single seat fighter pilot, you're never alone. If you're in a C-130 or if you're in an airliner, you're for sure never alone. And we work together to kind of win together. So if you are somebody that doesn't have somebody in your life, 988, Military One Source, if you're in the military, DPH's Director of Psychological Health in a squadron, there are always resources available. The VA, if it comes down to it, 988 is a good one, and 911. Call 911. If you're about to take something like that and make a permanent solution to a temporary problem, call, get help. We will make sure you're safe. So that's my pitch for that. Doug, what do you got?
I legit have nothing to add this time because you did so well. I had notes that said Sean and Mover are right about the holidays. Since the season is so salient in our minds, it's very easy for us to remember losses we've had near the holiday. And if that's not you, then you probably know somebody who it's true for. So reach out.
Yeah. And then John, who always has a great quote, says, "We are not put on this earth for ourselves, but are placed here for each other. If you are there always for others, then in time of need, someone will be there for you." Jeff Warner. Awesome. Well, doctor, farmer, Cajun,
Aviator, pilot.
When is the book coming out? And will you be reading your own audiobook?
You talking to me?
Should be yes and yes.
Yeah.
The answer should be yes and yes. Yeah.
Where's the book?
Well, actually, I didn't even get to this part. That's what I'm saying. I got so much to talk
Keep
about.
going. No, we got time.
So,
go ahead.
Okay. Well, it's only 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
No, we don't turn into pumpkins here. We just annoy people by making it a longer episode. Nothing happens.
Okay. Yeah. So years back, there was a guy that flew with us, and he wrote like this children's book about hurricane hunting or whatever. And I was illustrated. I was illustrated in it. No, his name's not Gonky. And yeah, he sent me a copy of it. And so there's a picture of me. He kind of got us a little mixed up, I think, in a crew positions or whatever. But in the back, it's got my name. I'm credited in a children's book or whatever. I can go get it if you want. I'll go run and get it and show you the cover. It's actually it's a little hardback book. It's great, and it's signed. And you know what? I'm keeping it in like pristine condition because one day I'll be a grandpa. Hopefully, it's decades down the road, and I'm gonna read that book to him. And I've actually used that book to read to my son's classes in like elementary and things like that. I get asked to do. Shouldn't be a surprise, but I get asked to do a lot of stuff like that, where I would go to the schools and give presentations. You guys haven't seen it. The next time I do it on the coast, if it's on drill weekend, I want to invite you to come and see my 45-minute to an hour hurricane hunter presentation. It takes you all the way through the mission, the history of it, all the different missions and everything. And I do a lot of before and after with Katrina because I flew Katrina and things like that. And it's really a great briefing. I'm actually going up in April to Mississippi State to speak for Mississippi Insurance Day. And I speak to a lot of groups that come to the casinos and things like that and give this briefing. So I used to go to schools and I'd read to the kids, and I'd always bring that book that asked me to read like at Christmas time. But I'd go in my flight suit because the kid, and it's to this day, my son's a freshman, and to this day, all of the kids still call me Cooper's dad. My son's name is Cooper, and it's so much fun. And I've been asked to talk. Was it last year? Yeah, 8th grade when he left the science day. I literally went into the classroom for 7 periods straight and gave that hurricane hunter presentation. I had to condense it to 45 minutes and be out. I was completely exhausted at the end of the day. I looked at his teacher and said, "Ma'am, I have the greatest respect for teachers now. I don't know how y'all do it." I said, "Oh, now, of course, you know, when I'm briefing, I'm at a really high level of enthusiasm, and I'm way up here. I've got a lot of energy. Unlike today, I'm pretty low key right now, the last 2 hours, but I'm way up there, you know, and I'm rolling through this thing, and all the kids want to be pilots afterwards and all this stuff." And I was exhausted. I came home and literally just hit the bed in my flight suit, and I was out. My wife's like, "What happened?" I'm like, "I'm exhausted." I'm like, I don't know how those teachers do it. So all the respect to the educators out there, because that's a lot of work.
Gonky, your next book, H is for Hurricane. You have to.
I do want to write about my experiences in the decades of doing this mission at the end.
Oh yeah,
you should. 100%, man.
Oh my God, I'm telling you, the people that I have worked with over the years, I mean, just some of the greatest individuals, and the stuff that I've seen and all that, the pictures, and some of these guys are just comedians. I'm telling you, boy, the stories I've got.
Sean, has anybody done the hurricane mission longer than you? Are you the high time? Are you getting close? Or?
I'm the oldest pilot. Yeah, that's the easiest way to say it. I'm the oldest.
Have you been there the longest?
Yeah. So like Ivan DeRoche was enlisted in the wing, so he's been in the 403rd wing, but I've been in the 53rd as a crew member. Well, no, I take it back. As a pilot, I'll be the oldest pilot, but we do have some load masters that were there before I got there. And that would be Jay Latham and Rick Cumbo. They're still around. So
wow. you could like Mover said, you literally write the book on it, man. You
write the book.
Being the high time
that's
guy.
That's what you need to do, is write the book and then
self-narrate the audio version.
Self-narrate the audio book. Yeah.
Might be a little might be a little long, but it's okay. It'll be good. Good reading.
It is a 17-hour audiobook. Aaron says, "I did my best to protect my squadron mates from the 5-inch roaches and the KAFB triangle back in '92.
Yes, the triangle. Oh. I drive across the triangle every day. Well, Monday through Friday.
Whew. Well, I think that's our show. Gonky, you got anything to add? Did you talk at all today?
I just asked a question. There was 3 questions asked. The first one, the second one, and then this one. It's like we covered all 3 of them.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a good time. I told you, I said, "Okay, you want to have me on?" I said, "Look, I'm telling you, I can talk." I said, "So be ready."
I think this was awesome, and we love having you on, and you're welcome back anytime.
Oh yeah.
Thanks, man. I had a blast. This is the first time I've done a podcast or been a part of it. This is really a lot of fun.
Yeah. So, yeah. It's good for us too. We're just like to listen.
It's therapy, man. It's therapy.
It is. I'll come back anytime y'all want to have me on. No doubt.
Hell yeah. All right. Well, to the kids at home, thanks for watching, and we'll see you. What? What?
Are we doing next? Is it next Sunday we're doing, or Monday?
Sunday.
Next week? Sunday.
Sunday.
All right.
Yeah, it's Christmas. Sunday
Sunday show for the Christmas.
Sunday. All right.
Very good.
Good night, everybody.